Chapter 5171. Those four sacred beasts surrounded the young lady with an intimate and harmonious look. It was like a heavy slap on Jiang family's patriarch's face. This was a complete slap on his face. Perhaps no one in the crowd had expected this. The rumored for great sacred beasts were contracted by a young lady from the lower realm, facing everyone's shocked and complicated gazes. Yi Qing Luo totally didn't pay any attention to it. Her vision was fixed on these few companions in front of her. Her long and narrow eyes were slightly curved as it gave a gentle arc. She stretched out her hand and touched the four companions as the smile on her pink lips deepened. "You're finally out!" Ever since they came to the Devil region, she couldn't sense the presence of the pet space. To these few adorable beasts, she missed them very much. Chi-Chi's huge head rubbed against Yi Qing Luo. One head had already covered the young lady. The huge creature's voice was very soft. "Master, master, Chi-Chi missed you so much, you stinky tiger. Hurry up and get out of the way. Let me see if master has become ugly again." This arrogant voice was obviously Qi Yan. "Is master all right?" This gentle young man's voice was obviously Black Tortoise Xian Gui. "I didn't expect you, lass, to inherit the God Emperor's power." This steady voice was obviously Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon's whiskers fluttered as it lamented. "We were suddenly sealed in the pet dimension. We couldn't leave, and we couldn't get in touch with you. Just now, a sudden surge of energy broke the barrier between us, and we were able to come out of the pet dimension." Azure Dragon's huge eyes had already seen the surrounding environment and immediately understood what had happened. And it was precisely because of this. Earlier, after they appeared, it was to create momentum for their own master. The sacred beast's might was majestic and sharp, as well as a huge pressure oppressing the crowd's nerves. Yi Qing Luo flipped over and leapt onto Chi-Chi's back. On the huge white tiger, there was a scorching flame which was extremely obvious. After that, Chi-Chi started to move and walked back towards the direction where Feng family's patriarch and the rest were. As for the other three sacred beasts, they were like the most loyal guardians, firmly following behind Chi-Chi, who was also Yi Qing Luo's back. That imposing manner was like a rainbow, that mighty and domineering. This scene was reflected in everyone's eyes. He would probably not be able to forget this scene for the next few decades. All the way back to Feng clan master's side. The originally magnificent cemetery that had now collapsed into ruins was the center of it all. It was as if he was covered in frost, and the cold intent spread out in all directions. Yi Qing Luo sat leisurely on the back of the white tiger. Her eyes were calm, but there was a sense of foreboding chill. The appearance of the four great saint beasts. It was exactly what she needed right now. She must do it before her mother loses all of her strength. Fulfill Nyangqin's expectations. The imposing manner between Yi Qing Luo's brows grew stronger and stronger. A voice as cold as ice rang out from all directions. "If I'm not qualified to inherit the throne of the Divine Emperor, then who is?" The girl's long and narrow eyes were filled with a mocking smile. Even though they were far away, she could still accurately fix her gaze on the Jiang clan's patriarch. She sneered, "You?" Without waiting for Patriarch Jiang to respond, Yi Qing Luo indifferently sneered and ridiculed. "But on what basis? You and my Feng family have been in charge of the God realm for so many years. That's because we have this qualification. And the reason why I can inherit the throne of the Divine Emperor is because of the Feng family's blood flowing in my body, so I can obtain the recognition of the Divine Emperor's inheritance." Chapter 5172. When Yi Qing Luo reached this point, she paused slightly. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, adding a sense of mockery and mockery. She tilted her head and fixed her teasing eyes on Patriarch Jiang. She said sarcastically, "If Patriarch Jiang really wanted to be a divine emperor, Why didn't you try to get the inheritance of a divine emperor after so many years? Jiang family master's face was livid with anger. Isn't this because of your Feng family's selfishness? He hid the inheritance of the divine emperor in the tomb of the former divine emperor. How can we get the inheritance of the divine emperor? Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue, spread out her hands, and sighed helplessly. So it's because you don't have the ability. You, the head of the Jiang clan, was exasperated. Yi Qing Luo interrupted again. The divine emperor's inheritance is controlled by our Feng family. This is our strength, our qualification, and you, Jiang family, and even other aristocrats, can't get the qualification of the divine emperor's inheritance. Nor can you find the whereabouts of the divine emperor's inheritance. That is your incompetence. All of you are weak and incompetent. Why should I be the scapegoat? Yi Qing Luo's sentence after sentence was totally stabbing a knife into Patriarch Zhang's heart. Following that, Yi Qing Luo slowly stood up on Chi-Chi's back. The young girl in a pink dress on the back of the huge white tiger was very eye-catching. The aura that the young girl released bit by bit overlapped with the might of the holy beast. The atmosphere of the entire Devil Destruction Mountain had sunk into a strange and stagnant atmosphere that made it difficult for people to breathe. I found the Divine Emperor's tomb, obtained the Divine Emperor's inheritance, and inherited the Divine Emperor's inheritance. The girl enunciated each word clearly. This is my qualification. Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. A sharp, cold light swept across everyone. Do you still have any objections? These simple words came out of his mouth. The girl's tone was also extremely casual. However, it caused everyone to feel an indescribable fear in their hearts. Especially just a few breaths after the young girl finished speaking, the four saint beasts began to move. He growled at them in warning. The warning was too obvious. The Devil Destruction Mountain quietened down. How could anyone dare to object? There was no way he could refute Yi Qing Luo's words. It doesn't matter what you think, and it doesn't matter whether you are willing or not. My Feng family will be a phoenix for 10,000 years. From today onwards, I, Feng family's descendant Feng Qing Luo. It's the new divine phoenix of the God realm. The girl's words were unquestionable. It was very intimidating. The people from the divine world simply had no room to refute. After intimidating that group of people, Yi Qing Luo had no intention to waste any more time. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the onlookers. The people surrounding them naturally refused to leave, even if he could not obtain the inheritance of the divine emperor, even if he could not contract a sacred beast. At the very least, I can enter the tomb of the divine emperor and get some divine artifacts, right? It should be noted that this was a divine artifact that had been placed in the tomb of the divine emperor for tens of thousands of years. Any one of them could set off a gust of wind. However, the four sacred beasts unleashed their might at the same time, all kinds of crazily chasing people away. In the end, it was completely dispersed. Devil Destruction Mountain quietened down. Yi Qing Luo looked at the tomb, which had already turned into ruins, and finally her gaze fell onto the increasingly transparent and weak Feng Ge. Her throat tightened as she called out hoarsely, "Mother." Feng Ge gave a gentle smile as her eyes were filled with joy and encouragement towards Yi Qing Luo. You've done very well to entrust the God realm and the Feng family to you. I'm very assured. New Divine Phoenix, you'll always be the best existence in Mother's heart. Chapter 5173. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were red and her breathing was getting heavier, as though something was blocking her heart. Feng Ge shook her head gently. Don't cry. To be able to see you again, I'm already very content. After that, her gaze went past Yi Qing Luo and looked towards a certain direction behind her. Her smile was even gentler, with a tinge of joy. You're here. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as a figure flashed past her mind. She turned her head and indeed saw, Bloodbone Barbaric King. Why was Uncle Bone here at Devil Destruction Mountain? Wasn't he escorting those two people who had disguised themselves as her and DMO Xian? Bloodbone Barbaric King's gaze was fixed on Feng Gu without blinking. The emotions in his eyes were extremely complicated, making one unable to tell what he was thinking, until Bloodbone Barbaric King stopped in front of Feng Gu. One person and one spirit, for eyes met. Feng Ji's brows softened as her lips curled into a sweet smile. Ah, Gu, it's been hard on you for so long. Bloodbone Barbaric King didn't say a word as his fingers clenched tightly. His entire body tensed up. Feng Gu seemed to have guessed Bloodbone Barbaric King's reaction as she smiled gently. If it wasn't for you, I really don't know what to do. Her eyes drooped, and the gentleness in her brows made her exquisite and stunning face look extremely gentle. To be able to see you again, I'm very happy. Bloodbone Barbaric King looked at her without blinking. Their eyes were filled with surging waves that were crazily surging. The lady's sweet smile was reflected in Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils. After some time, Bloodbone Barbaric King then spoke in a hoarse voice, "Regret." These 3 words seemed to have used up all his strength. Feng Gu raised her eyes. Her brows were gentle as she gazed at Bloodbone Barbaric King's handsome face, smiling with some joy and relief. She nodded her head very lightly and said clearly, "Regret." Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils shrank abruptly. Feng Ji's smile became even more gentle as she stretched out that slightly transparent hand, stretching out towards Bloodbone Barbaric King across the void. Following that, it tightened bit by bit. It was as if he wanted to hold the barbaric Bloodbone King's hand. After Feng Gu finished this action, she chuckled. "If the person I chose was you, how good would that be?" Her words were soft. However, his words were clearly heard by the barbaric Bloodbone King. The barbaric Bloodbone King's heart skipped a beat. His heart skipped a few beats. This was his first time hearing Feng Ji's positive answer. Their feelings for each other deepened. 10,000 years of waiting can say this sentence. He was already satisfied. The barbaric Bloodbone King slowly stretched out his hand, wanting to hold Feng Ji's hand. But Feng Gu had already withdrawn his hand. She gave him an extremely beautiful smile. After that, she looked at Yi Qing Luo again. "Luo, you're luckier than me and smarter than me. Mother knows that he will take good care of you." Her voice grew weaker and weaker. His gaze then looked towards DMO Xian. "My daughter and the Feng family, I'll leave it to you, Mother." Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened as she realized something. DMO Xian's gaze was firm, neither servile nor overbearing. "Yes, I will." Feng Gu exchanged a few more words with Patriarch Feng and Feng Liqiang. Finally, his sight fell onto the barbaric Bloodbone King. The barbaric Bloodbone King's hand had been stretched towards her. His hand was trembling visibly. His thin lips trembled as he said word by word, "I will protect the people you care about and the family." Feng Gu suddenly burst into laughter. Chapter 5174. That light laughter rippled in the wind, and it even had an echo. In the laughter, there was some relief and lightness. "You have always understood me, able to guess all the thoughts in my heart." Feng Gu raised her hand and slowly pressed it on her chest. The smile on her brows became gentler. "I am sincere." Perhaps she was indeed very selfish, in the eyes of the Bloodbone Savage King. At this critical juncture, she gave him a response, a memory which was enough to make him laugh secretly for the rest of his life. It was hope he was able to protect Yi Qing Luo and take care of the Feng family. But when she said those words, it was not because of this motive. She was sincere regret, sincerely felt that if the person she had fallen in love with was Agu, all these would not have happened. She would come out. Only hope she and Agu's relationship did not have any more regrets. Agu had been waiting for her from 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years later. His heart had never changed, and absolutely would not be moved by any other woman. So she was willing to selfishly say these words, which would bring endless shock to Agu, and perhaps it might cause Agu to not see any other woman in the future, came out. Gur! The blood-boned savage king's pupils constricted suddenly. He looked at Feng-gu in disbelief, watching her actions. Ecstasy gushed up his heart. He suddenly pounced towards Feng-gu, trying to hold her hand. Is what you said true? You really? But before his hand touched Feng-gu, that sweet and gentle smile, with a satisfied smile on her face, bit by bit dissipated in the air. Not a single remnant shadow could be seen. The wind brought the gentle and loving voice of the woman. Word by word was clearly enunciated into everyone's ears. I will use another way. To accompany by your side, I will always be here. The blood-boned savage king's ecstasy fell heavily at this moment. He stretched out his hand again, grabbing the air. Gur! But there was no response from that gentle voice. Feng-gu had completely disappeared. Her obsession had been exhausted. The blood-boned savage king knelt heavily on the rein. His eyes were lifeless as he supported himself on the ground. His face was filled with disappointment and shock. Mother. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists and buried her head in Di Mo Xian's arms. Lin Mo Xian's clothes were soaked in tears. Di Mo Xian gently patted her back, silently comforting her. Feng Clan Master slowly turned his back, and tears flowed down his face. As for Feng Liqiong, she was bawling like a child. The group of people calmed down. No one mentioned anything about Feng-gu anymore. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to leave Devil Extermination Mountain. After she led everyone down the mountain, she asked the demonic hall to send people to set up a few tents at the foot of the mountain as a place to rest. The demonic hall did not agree at first. She didn't expect the seemingly powerless Muyu, who only knew a little about medicine, was actually the daughter of the previous divine emperor, the current divine phoenix, and that seemingly harmless and well-behaved man with azure eyes was the real Overlord. Wasn't he just messing with her? It was no wonder that at the wedding in Devil Head City, they could make the nine-tailed fox, the venerable sovereign's great mercy, holy beast, so obedient. But if she rejected, when the Overlord's icy cold gaze swept past them, they were all stuck in their throats. The demonic hall sent people over to set up the tents. She stood in front of Yi Qing Luo. Her cold and elegant face was obviously unhappy. The new divine phoenix wouldn't have forgotten what she had promised me, right? Chapter 5175. Yi Qing Luo raised her gaze slightly. She, who had already inherited the divine emperor's legacy, exuded an oppressive aura that no one could look at directly. She gathered her sleeves and looked at the cold face of the Devil Hall. She raised her eyes and said lightly, "Of course I won't forget." Devil Palace stared at Yi Qing Luo and sized her up for a while as her beautiful eyes slowly narrowed. "Why did you disguise yourself as another identity to come to the Devil region?" She still couldn't figure it out. As the eldest sister of the Feng family in the God Realm, why did she need to hide her identity? He then thought about what she had done in the demonic domain. The Demon Hall had no choice but to think further. If this Feng Qing Luo was sent by the God Realm to invade the Devil Domain, then if she cooperated with Feng Qing Luo, wouldn't she be helping Feng Qing Luo completely? The Demon Hall was filled with doubts. But the biggest reason was, in fact, she knew it herself. It came from new-roused jealousy, especially when she had almost married the Overlord in front of Feng Qing Luo. Even if that Dizun was a fake, standing in front of the future mistress of the Imperial Palace, whom the Overlord had acknowledged, Feng Qing Luo, she always had a kind of the embarrassment of being so lowly to the point of dust. Yi Qing Luo gently caressed Chi-Chi, who had turned into a cat in her arms, as her gaze was calm. "You don't have to worry. I'm not interested in the Devil region." She was very straightforward and had no intention of beating around the bush. I came to the demon domain purely to see my mother. You should also understand that the gloomy palace is eyeing my mother's tomb, covetously. They want to get the location of the godly emperor's tomb from me. If I don't change my appearance, do you think I can inherit the throne so smoothly? Yi Qing Luo's counter-question made the Devil Palace speechless. The Demon Hall and Gloomy Palace were working together. Naturally, he understood the style of the Abyss Palace, with the way Shady Palace did things behind the scenes. She would definitely snatch the opportunity before Feng Qing Luo to barge into the God Emperor's tomb, turning the God Emperor's tomb upside down. The Demon Hall was silent for a moment. How do you plan to deal with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness now? Yi Qing Luo had no intention to hide it. The seal behind the secluded palace is at Devil Extermination Mountain. As for the exact location, after I find out, I will personally settle this 10,000-year-old grudge. There was no need for her to hide anything. Everything the Devil Hall did was for the sake of the Devil Region, for their own ambitions. Right now, on one side was the Dark Palace, which had already been defeated once, and was obviously up to no good. The ambition and pride of the Demon Hall would never allow itself to be used by others. On the other hand, it was the new Divine Phoenix who had already inherited the Divine Emperor's inheritance. It represented the entire God realm. There was no need for the Demon Hall to worry that she would take this opportunity to attack the demon domain. After all, she had just taken office and she needed her face. I can't do such a shameless thing to ruin the reputation of the Feng family. The cold and beautiful eyes of the Demon Queen flickered with a faint light. After a while, she opened her mouth and said coldly, then, I will wait quietly for the new Divine Phoenix's good news. I hope that you will remember our agreement. After that, the Devil Hall didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Yi Qing Luo looked at the departing silhouette of the Devil Hall as her pink lips curled into an undetectable arc. This Devil Hall most probably wasn't as clean as it appeared on the surface. However, as long as it was at this critical juncture, if she didn't stir up any trouble. During this period of time in the Devil region, Yi Qing Luo still wanted to maintain a superficial relationship. Chapter 5176. At least it was more convenient for many things. Yi Qing Luo retracted her gaze and looked at the surrounding people who were still setting up their tents. She then walked towards the other corner of Devil Destruction Mountain, a more secluded place, but it wasn't too far away from the tents. She intended to stay in Devil Destruction Mountain, to wait for the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness, Huang Wuyo's seal. If she could reseal Huang Wuyo before his seal was lifted, or take the opportunity to eliminate him, then everyone would be happy. But before this, Yi Qing Luo had persuaded Patriarch Feng to return. After all, there was still Feng, Shi's friend in the Feng family. If the Palace of Darkness took the opportunity to play some despicable tricks, her weakness would be pinched. Patriarch Feng thought of Feng Shi and the hostage of the Palace of Darkness, Princess Linglong. He endured the pain of losing Feng Gu and his worry for Yi Qing Luo as he left the Devil region. But Feng Liqiong refused to leave no matter what. He knew what Feng Ji's wish was, so he wanted to stay and help Yi Qing Luo to fulfill Feng Ji's wish. Yi Qing Luo knew that Feng Liqiong was repenting, feeling ashamed that her obsession with Feng Gu had distorted her thinking and caused her to do so many wrong things. Yi Qing Luo didn't stop her, but because Feng Gu had completely disappeared from this world. Feng Liqiong couldn't control her emotions at all, so she went off alone to ease her grief. So did Barbaric Blood King. As for DMO Xian, he summoned the disciples of Dragon Scale Palace and started to search around Devil Destruction Mountain for the real place where Huang Wuyo was sealed, which meant, now, other than the guards who were setting up the tents, there was only Yi Qing Luo alone. When Yi Qing Luo walked to a secluded corner, She flipped over and climbed up a big tree. Her back leaned against the tree trunk as she bent one knee and placed one hand on it. His other leg was dangling leisurely, swinging back and forth. Her slender fingers lightly tapped on the tree trunk twice as she spoke in a casual tone. "How long do you intend to follow me secretly? Haven't you enjoyed the show?" The young lady's voice was slightly hoarse, but it was full of majesty. A figure suddenly appeared. With a lightning speed, it appeared in front of Yi Qingluo in a blink of an eye. The thick and solid tree trunk carried the weight of two people, and because of this sudden weight, it kept swaying. Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased as her voice became heavier. Men and women should not touch each other. Step down. That figure was still crouching in front of her, a pair of eyes that seemed to be filled with bloodlust and slaughter. At this moment, had an inexplicable and cold smile that was filled with killing intent. He stared at her without blinking. Yi Qingluo's hair stood on end from his stare as she raised her hand and gave a tight slap to the face in front of her, before he could slap the other party's face. Her wrist was held by someone. The icy cold touch made Yi Qingluo couldn't help but shiver. "Damned girl, you dare to play tricks on me!" The man's voice was low and cold, and it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. Yi Qingluo struggled against his hand. "I can't stand the yin qi on your body. Let go and get down!" The man frowned and tightened his grip on the girl's wrist. That icy cold, bloodthirsty gaze was fixated on Yi Qingluo for several breaths. Suddenly his sleeves fluttered as he landed under the tree. Yi Qingluo turned her head and looked at him from this angle. "Lord Demon Dragon, the deal between us has already ended. Why are you still looking for me?" Yes, the black-robed man in front of him was like an Azura from hell. He was the Demon Dragon King Long Ao. Chapter 5177. Long Ao's entire body was gloomy, and his entire body was filled with bloody killing intent. It did look quite scary. Yi Qingluo totally didn't dare to guess what he had done to harm Li before he was sealed, which made him look so gloomy. Obviously, he was just a hot-tempered fool who would resort to violence at the slightest disagreement. However, he had forcefully turned into a tyrant. Back in the tomb of the Divine Emperor, she made a deal with Long Ao. She lifted the seal on Long Ao, and Long Ao took her to the real tomb of the Divine Emperor. At that time, she hadn't truly unlocked Long Ao's seal. However, he still secretly made some movements that Long Ao wasn't aware of. About 4 hours later, Long Ao's seal would naturally be lifted, and now it was time for Long Ao's seal to be lifted. Yi Qingluo had guessed that Long Ao would come to settle the score with her, but she had not expected that. It would be so fast. "Why did I look for you?" You still have the guts to ask. Long Ao's tone was icy cold, as if a bone-piercing chill pierced into Yi Qingluo's skin. Yi Qingluo's expression remained unchanged as she continued to tilt her head and smiled sweetly. "How would I know if you're not here?" Long Ao's entire body's yin qi wreaked havoc as it entangled towards Yi Qingluo. "All right, remove the seal for this seat. How dare you abandon this seat?" Yi Qingluo's pink lips curled upwards as she replied seriously, "Aren't you already out now?" Long Ao was coming out now the main point. Most importantly, she had lied to him before this. Long Ao expressed that he was completely unable to accept it. He had lived for tens of thousands of years, but he was actually being played by a girl like this. "I've already stayed here for more than 10,000 years. Do you really need another 4 hours?" Yi Qingluo's slender fingers touched her chin. "Anyway, the ending is that you've already unlocked the seal and regained your freedom. That's enough, isn't it?" Long Ao. He actually felt that it made sense. Long Ao retracted his yin qi and jumped onto a tree beside Yi Qingluo. "Now that you've regained your freedom, why did you come looking for me?" Yi Qingluo turned her head over to look at him. "You've already unlocked the seal, so my vast aqua god relic to you isn't of much use." Long Ao had a gloomy expression on his face. He then said in a deadly earnest manner, "This lord has been sealed by that woman Fongo for so long. So, I have long been disconnected from this world. I only know you, so of course I have to follow you." Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "I don't seem to be very familiar with you." She paused and reminded him, "Before this, you wanted to take my life." Long Ao waved his hand. "Aren't you still alive? Do you need to harp on this trivial matter over and over again?" Therefore, was it his fault that she didn't die because of him? Yi Qing Luo was so angry that she laughed. She was not interested in having this unpredictable time bomb by her side. What if it blew up for no reason? Wouldn't she vomit to death? He probably saw through Yi Qing Luo's rejection. Long Ao leaned against the tree with the attitude of a big boss. His tone was sinister and carried a tinge of complacency. "Listen, you are looking for the monster that was sealed by that woman in the Devil Destruction Mountain." Yi Qing Luo originally didn't intend to bother about him, but after hearing this sentence, her expression changed slightly as her gaze congealed. "You know about it?" The monster, in Long Ao's words, was probably referring to Huang Wuyo. In the eyes of the Devil Dragon King, like Long Ao, Huang Wuyo had become a monster. That Huang Wuyo, what was his identity? Chapter 5178. Of course this seat knows. Long Ao gave a sinister smile. In this world, there's nothing that this seat doesn't know. Yi Qing Luo retorted coldly, "Then why don't you know that you'll be sealed by my mother?" Long Ao. The rampaging Yin Qi surged once again. Long Ao looked rather flustered and exasperated. "All right, if you don't want to know where that monster is sealed, then forget it. This seat will go myself." Yi Qing Luo. He was still acting like a tsundere. This Long Ao, why did his name and his aura totally not match? Where's the cool and aloof Azura from hell, who was filled with killing intent? She felt. Her Uncle Bone was probably more worthy of the name Long Ao. Yi Qing Luo straightened her body as she turned sideways to look at him. "Will you be so kind?" This Long Ao wasn't evil, but he was absolutely not a righteous person. Everything depended on his mood. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that Long Ao was purely out of touch with the world and wanted to pester her. Perhaps this Long Ao was harboring the thought of taking revenge on Fongo? Perhaps. When he brought her to the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed, then in front of her he would release Huang Wuyo's seal. Yi Qing Luo believed. Long Ao, this bastard, would never do such a stupid thing. Yi Qing Luo didn't conceal his suspicions. So infuriated that Long Ao's sinister aura started to sweep around. He flicked his black robe as he leapt down from the tree. Believe it or not, it's up to you. The wide black robe was like a black fog as it rolled down, forming a cold arc in the air. In a blink of an eye, he disappeared in front of Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's face didn't reveal much emotions. She curled her lips very lightly as her legs dangled in midair. With a delicate young lady's look, she sighed softly. "Tisk, I just wanted to agree to him, and he left. Forget it, forget it." Swoosh! In the air, there was the sound of clothes brushing past. Immediately following that, the tree which Yi Qing Luo was on shook violently. That man dressed in black robe, who was filled with an austere aura, appeared once again in front of Yi Qing Luo. He squatted on the tree trunk and pressed his hands beside his feet like a dog sitting. That pair of dark and sinister eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo, his face filled with an awkward and gloomy expression. "This seat will give you one more chance. Do you want to find that monster's territory or not?" This time round, Yi Qing Luo didn't tease Long Ao anymore. This Long Ao's brain doesn't seem to be working very well at present. Moreover, he looks like a bloody murderer. But he looks like a clown. But no matter how amusing a person was, there was still a bottom line. Long Ao had already bowed his head once. If she didn't let go, she was afraid that Long Ao wouldn't care about her anymore. Now, Only Long Ao could find the place where Huang Weo was sealed. Let's go. What are you waiting for? Long Ao saw that the girl was still sitting in the same place. He couldn't help but urge her. Yi Qing Luo replied, Wait for my uncle and Uncle Gu to come back, then we'll. Finding a territory is so troublesome. To think that you're that girl Rao's daughter, so timid and useless. Long Ao didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo to finish her sentence as he gave a look of disdain. He glanced sideways at Yi Qing Luo. Why? Are you afraid that this seat has no way to protect you? Yi Qing Luo. She totally didn't expect him to protect her. If he could stop scheming against her in the dark, she would be thankful, all right. Chapter 5179. Furthermore, his tone was filled with disdain. What was he trying to do? This was called vigilance. This was called using one's brain. But Long Ao had an impatient look, with a go if you want, I can't be bothered to wait on you expression. Yi Qing Luo muttered to herself for some time before summoning Azure Dragon's son, Shiju. Yi Qing Luo stroked Shiju's head, making it wait for Bloodbone Barbaric King and Feng Li Qiong's arrival. Then she told them about this matter. Shiju seemed to have successfully evolved into a leopard dragon. Leopard dragon was actually a collective term. Currently, Shiju's original body was a huge dragon, but the dragon scales on its body were like leopard prints, especially since Shiju not only possessed the dragon skills, it also possessed the leopard skills. It was simply an invincible combination. Most importantly, Shiju could smoothly interact with other humans now. This was the most important reason why Yi Qing Luo kept it. The other reason was for safety. Although Shiju had advanced, it was still a dragon. But a young child was, after all, a young child. Shiju was the most suitable one among her war pets. If any accident happened while heading towards Huang Weo's sealed grounds, it would be terrible. Furthermore, Shiju had signed a contract with her. Shiju could sense her location. It could also bring Bloodbone Barbaric King and Feng Li Qiong to follow her aura to look for her. Shiju obediently rubbed against Yi Qing Luo's palm and headed towards the foot of Devil Destruction Mountain, towards the direction where the tent was set up. Seeing Shiju's figure disappearing, Yi Qing Luo then leapt down from the tree as her pink dress fluttered in the wind. When she landed stably on the ground, her dress fluttered like peach blossoms in full bloom. Extremely beautiful. She squinted at Long Ao. All right, let's go. Troublesome. Long Ao curled his lips as he spat out 2 words eerily. Following that, his black robe fluttered as he headed towards Devil Destruction Mountain. Yi Qing Luo followed closely. Long Ao's speed was extremely fast. Even with Yi Qing Luo's agility, she needed to be extremely serious before she could keep up. It showed that Long Ao's true ability had far exceeded her current understanding. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure. If Long Ao displayed a little more ability, under the premise that she didn't need to rely on the blink movement, would she be able to catch up to Long Ao? Yi Qing Luo suppressed the suspicions she had towards Long Ao and didn't think too much about it. As long as he could grasp Long Ao's mind, even if she couldn't make Long Ao help her, at the very least, they couldn't become enemies. However, she was afraid that Long Ao was teasing her by leading this path, right? Was he bringing her around the Devil Destruction Mountain? They had already circled around Devil Destruction Mountain by more than 1 round. Long Ao didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Yi Qing Luo was contemplating if she should call out to Long Ao to have a good talk with him about the principles of life. At this moment, Long Ao's footsteps suddenly halted as he raised his palm and struck down towards Yi Qing Luo. Wow, 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 wow. Yi Qing Luo almost cursed out loud. Her fingers raised and the glower flame fan opened up, ready to strike back. That ghastly cold wind from his palm brushed past Yi Qing Luo's side as it crashed onto a big tree behind her. Rumble. There was a deafening collapse. The tree fell down with a loud bang, and a deep pit was formed in the ground. Yi Qing Luo, so that palm was not meant for her. Then what was the meaning of him hitting a tree? Was he trying to show off his might? Yi Qing Luo turned her head as she looked at that huge deep pit. Just as she was about to open her mouth, her peripheral vision suddenly swept. At the deep pit where the big tree had collapsed, a flight of stairs could be faintly seen, extending down along the deep pit. Chapter 5180. That was Underground Passage. Yi Qing Luo's starry pupils contracted slightly as she was shocked and pleasantly surprised. Behind her, a chilly voice broke her surprise. "Feng family's lass, what are you trying to do?" That sinister, chilly voice seemed to be wrapped with the world's most intense malice. Yi Qing Luo thought of her earlier actions as she turned her head away awkwardly. Long Ao's gaze was filled with ridicule and disdain as he stared at her opened, glower flame fan. Her stance was as though she was going to have a fight with him. Yi Qing Luo's mind spun quickly, and just as Long Ao was about to open his mouth again, she cut off his words with a flowery smile. I'm feeling a little hot, so I'm fanning." Saying that, she waved the glower flame fan and fanned herself twice. Luckily her weapon was a fan. If it was a huge machete, could it be that she had to explain that she was lifting weights? She simply didn't dare to think about it. Long Ao snorted coldly and couldn't be bothered to haggle with her. "It better be like this." Finishing his words, he walked past Yi Qing Luo and directly headed towards that underground passage. The pitch-black pit was pitch black as far as the eye could see. She could only vaguely see the long staircase, which was hidden in the darkness. Long Ao had already walked in. She had walked all the way here. Yi Qing Luo naturally didn't have any hesitation. She lifted her feet and followed Long Ao in. The moment she stepped on the staircase, Yi Qing Luo only felt a bone-piercing, dense yin qi rushing towards her. This yin qi, it was different from Long Ao's body. Long Ao's entire body was emitting a kind of extremely aggressive, malicious yin qi, as if he wanted to kill her at any time. But this yin qi was the kind of yin qi that made one's hair stand on end from the depths of one's heart. It was as though someone was in the dark, eyeing her covetously. It made her hair stand on end. There was a feeling that her inner heart was being peeped at, whereas in front was a stretch of boundless darkness, a darkness without a single bit of light. Yi Qing Luo could only rely on the sound of Long Ao's steps on the staircase to differentiate his position. "How did you know that there's an underground passage here?" Yi Qing Luo followed her intuition and asked as she walked down. Long Ao was only 2 or 3 steps away from her. His voice seemed even more gloomy and cold in the darkness. "Do you think that I'm a fool like you? Do you think that you can't find a place even after looking for a long time? Have you forgotten why I became the one who opened the door of the divine emperor's tomb?" Yi Futian sneered without holding back. "For seal the entrance of the divine emperor's tomb and seal the aura of the tomb. As for Huang Weio, he was sealed here by Feng Ge. The reason why Feng Ge built the divine emperor's tomb here was to suppress Huang Weio. Therefore, how could Long Ao not know where Huang Weio was sealed?" She had asked a stupid question. "What do you want to do after you find the place of that monster?" Long Ao suddenly retracted his mocking attitude and asked in a casual manner. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes but didn't reply. Long Ao continued, "Don't tell me that you want to reseal that monster for your mother." "I can't." Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. Long Ao didn't give her any face as he laughed out. "You weakling, I'm afraid you don't know that monster's ability, just based on you. You want to seal that monster? Do you know that in order to kill him, your mother even sacrificed her life and only managed to seal him, just based on you? I'm afraid even 10 lives aren't enough for you to play with." Chapter 5181. Long Outyan's tone was filled with ridicule, even though she was in the dark. Yi Qing Luo could feel Long Out Yin's contemptuous and ridiculing gaze. Yi Qing Luo was calm and wasn't affected by Long Out Yin's ridicule. How would I know if I don't try? So many years have passed, the seal should have loosened. I heard that the dark Nether Palace, a force that has spread to all the major realms without anyone noticing and has become a huge force, was founded by his divine sense. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk when she mentioned the Palace of Darkness. Long Out Yin obviously sensed the change in her emotions as he sneered. Do you think that the monster is suppressed by the seal now? You can take the opportunity to seal him again. I'll tell you this. Long Out Yin suddenly stopped in his tracks. In the dark, he accurately caught her wrist. That icy cold touch made Yi Qing Luo shiver. She subconsciously wanted to shake his hand off. Long Out Yin's voice was deep, revealing some unknown ridicule. That monster, even if only one part of his consciousness is outside, to kill you is as easy as flipping his palm. This sentence came out from Long Out Yin's mouth. Regarding Huang Wuyo's evaluation, it was indeed too high. After all, people like Long Out Yin rarely complimented others. To be praised by Long Out Yin, his ability was not to be belittled. But what did Long Out Yin's words mean by despising her? Did he look down on her? Don't think that you can surpass that woman just because you obtain the God Emperor's inheritance. Long Out Yin looked at her in disdain in the dark. That woman's ability. I'm afraid no one in this world can surpass her, if not because... When he said this, his tone turned cold, and he scoffed, full of disdain and ridicule. Yi Qing Luo knew what Long Out Yin had not finished his sentence. Actually, speaking of, Feng Ji's ability was definitely above Huang Wuyo, to a level that no one could surpass. But Feng Ge still gave up her life in order to seal Huang Wuyo. All these just because she was a woman, because a woman's heart was soft, because a woman, no matter how much hatred she had, she still loved that man. Because of love, that was why she paid with her life. Because he had sacrificed his life, the longing and worry for his daughter for 10,000 years had worn away all the love he had for her. In the end, it was because one had never loved and the other was deeply in love. That's why it ended up like this. Yi Qing Luo's long eyelashes fluttered lightly. She slightly lowered her eyebrows, and a wisp of coldness flowed through her charming eyes. Her fair and delicate fingers slightly clenched. She said, "So, I will solve this problem for Mother." "Deal with it?" Long Out Yin sneered without giving him any face. "You? How do you plan to deal with it?" Yi Qing Luo's vision drooped slightly as she stared at her own hands without blinking, although nothing could be seen in the darkness. However, her eyes were still bright as if they had been washed. Little girl from the Feng family, inheriting the Divine Emperor's inheritance doesn't mean you can inherit that woman's power. The Divine Emperor's inheritance is the Divine Emperor's inheritance. At most, it can only relieve some of the burden on your body, but everything still depends on your own strength. Long Out Yin laughed coldly. "You're a weakling. Even if you inherited the Divine Emperor's legacy, you're still a weakling." This point, Yi Qing Luo understood clearly. The so-called Divine Emperor's inheritance only inherited the Divine Emperor's imprint. Trash 7th Young Mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th Young Mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5182. Not inheriting all the previous God Emperor's power. The God Emperor's inheritance could not make her stronger out of nothing. After all, a person's strength depended on themselves. If Feng Gu really injected all his power into Yi Qing Luo's body, Yi Qing Luo might not be able to take it. Moreover, it was not the power that she had cultivated bit by bit. There was no way to fuse it with her body. She could only. Obtaining the God Emperor's inheritance was just an opportunity for Yi Qing Luo to become stronger. With the God Emperor's inheritance, the burden that her body could take was far beyond her imagination. She could freely use the profound energy, absorb the earth's spiritual chi, and advance to the profound grade. But to become stronger, there was still a process. Previously, her advancement speed was already considered too fast. This time, she inherited the God Emperor's inheritance. The profound energy surged within her body, and she could also touch the barrier to break through. But she was unable to advance, as if she was stuck at the same spot, unable to go up or down. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure what kind of feeling this was. Yi Qing Luo's slender fair hand gently brushed past the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. The light in her eyes grew brighter, as if it could light up a star in the darkness. I understand what you mean. She opened her mouth. Her voice was clear. In the spacious and long tunnel, there was a faint echo. Following that, she slowly brushed away Long Ao's hand. Her pink lips moved slightly again as she spat out, "But you forgot a very important point. I am my mother's daughter." Her gaze passed over Long Ao in the darkness and fell straight into the boundless darkness. Her voice was so chilly that there was no joy or anger. "I am also the vessel that Huang Wuyo tried all ways and means to get." This sentence made Long Ao's ridiculing laughter stop. This was the truth. Yi Qing Luo's existence. It was entirely Huang Wuyo who used the so-called forbidden technique to probe and design. Huang Wuyo tried all ways and means to come to Feng Ji's side, even sacrificing himself, to deceive Feng Ji's feelings, just to let Feng Ge give birth to his and Feng Ji's child, that, after Huang Wuyo probed, would be able to achieve all his ambitions. A child who possessed the one and only divine phoenix, profound jade heart. A child who could nurture the divine phoenix, profound jade heart, until the divine phoenix, profound jade heart's energy was maximized. Yes, Yi Qing Luo, who had inherited Huang Wuyo and Feng Ji's powers. His true talent was not necessarily inferior to Feng Ge. He might even surpass Feng Ge. Of course, this was only a guess. The truth would depend on Yi Qing Luo's choice. Yi Qing Luo also understood this point. She knew that her talent was different from ordinary people. He also knew that he had a heavy responsibility. She could not stay out of this matter just because she could not deal with Huang Wuyo. It was not only because she had promised Feng Ge, or was it because it was also for her own sake. Even if she didn't look for Huang Wuyo would not let her off either. Between her and Huang Wuyo, eventually one person would disappear from this world. It would be best if he could seal Huang Wuyo completely. But if it really came to that, she would not be soft-hearted. Long Ao remained silent for a while. Then he coldly snorted and restrained his gloomy and cold aura. He flicked his sleeves and continued to walk forward. "Suit yourself." Yi Qing Luo confirmed Long Ao's direction in the dark, based on the footsteps. She chuckled and followed him, saying, "Lord Mystic Dragon will help me, right?" Chapter 50-183. Long Ao spurted out a cold stream from his nose as he gave a ridiculing laugh. He didn't give a direct answer, but that sneer seemed to be ridiculing Yi Qing Luo's whims. Yi Qing Luo didn't continue asking. She didn't know what had happened between Long Ao and her mother, but from Long Ao's words earlier, she could feel that Long Ao didn't hate her mother at all. More than that, there was a little care. Otherwise, based on Long Ao's character, Feng Ge had sealed him for thousands of years, and after he unlocked the seal, he actually didn't show any signs of rage. Although his words weren't respectful towards Feng Ge, it also contained zero disdain. But Yi Qing Luo could obviously feel that Long Ao's words were disdainful. She wasn't sure. When she was dealing with Huang Wuyo and met with danger, would Long Ao help her? But she could be sure. At least Long Ao wouldn't stab her in the back. That was enough. Along the way, there were no more words. The two of them walked down in the darkness. Yi Qing Luo had been calculating the time. About half an hour or so. Long Ao's footsteps halted. Yi Qing Luo almost knocked into him. Long Ao had already retreated backwards, avoiding Yi Qing Luo's touch. After Yi Qing Luo stabilized her footsteps, she stretched out her legs and circled around the surroundings to ascertain that it was flat ground before she opened her mouth. "We've reached!" "Do you think it's that simple?" Long Ao sneered, not knowing if it was her misconception. Long Ao's voice was heavy with breathing, but it was only for a moment. Yi Qing Luo walked towards him, trying to stretch out her hand to grab him. Long Ao retreated backwards once again. So scared that your legs are soft and you still need this seat to support you?" He sneered coldly. "If you're afraid, then scram back now." Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips, and suddenly her fingertips pressed on the profound phoenix ring. "I remember I have a luminous pearl in my realm ring. I'll take it out first. If you want to die, then take it out." Long Ao's gloomy deep voice was like an icy chill, eroding Yi Qing Luo's eardrums. "This seat won't save you." Yi Qing Luo's actions paused. Long Ao said in a mocking tone, "This is the place of that monster. You took the luminous pearl because you were afraid that he would not know. Did you come to find him?" Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers tightened and clenched again. He found his voice after a long while. Then he said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Long Ao, your voice is somewhat wrong." Long Ao's breathing slightly froze. Soon after, he laughed mockingly. "What's wrong with my voice? I'm afraid you've been scared out of your wits, and your mind isn't clear, right?" He seemed to be impatient and couldn't be bothered with Yi Qing Luo's mental state as he walked forward. "If you want to find that monster, then follow me. Don't mess around with other messy things." What else was Yi Qing Luo thinking about? However, Long Ao's pace was extremely fast. Listening to the sound of his footsteps, it seemed that he was quite a distance away from her. She could only suppress the restlessness in her heart and chase after him. He had barely taken 2 steps. Suddenly, in the underground tunnel, a gust of extremely cold hurricane surged, rushing so hard that Yi Qing Luo shut her eyes as she subconsciously raised her hand to cover her face. That gust of extremely cold, gloomy, and strange aura scuttled up from the bottom of Yi Qing Luo's feet. The majestic and vast profound energy confined her. "We've been discovered by that monster." In front, Long Ao's angry voice was heard. This time, Yi Qing Luo didn't hear wrongly. His voice was filled with suppressed panting, as though he was restraining something. Chapter 5184. Long Ao. Yi Qing Luo had just opened her mouth when a gust of biting cold yin qi rushed into her mouth. The surrounding profound light was filled with a biting cold, murderous intent. The yin qi in the surroundings seemed to have gathered together. She was totally unable to move and could only allow that yin qi to spread throughout her limbs and bones. Slap! A slap landed on her back. That slap wasn't considered heavy, but it wasn't light either. It made Yi Qing Luo feel a stinging pain. "Are you really that girl's daughter? Why are you so stupid?" A hand clasped her wrist. Following that, there was a strong suction force that pulled her out of the yin qi's restraint. Which was that slap? It dispersed the yin qi that was running around in his body. The pitch-black tunnel. The next moment, it became bright. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were stimulated so much that she closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, she saw a handsome man dressed in black, standing 5 steps in front of her. That figure tall and slender. That face handsome and imposing. On the surface, he gave off the feeling of a delicate scholar. But between his brows, there was a treacherous, sinister aura. Yi Qing Luo only needed one look to recognize him. Huang Weio. No. To be more precise, this was Huang Weio's consciousness. Previously at the Emperor God's tomb, that wisp of Huang Weio's consciousness had been crushed by her. She didn't expect that in such a short period of time, Huang Weio could split out another wisp of consciousness, and this Huang Weio in front of her. Obviously, compared to the Huang Weio she met in the Emperor God's tomb, his aura was much stronger. Was this his territory? The consciousness that Huang Weio split out wasn't Huang Weio, but it was indeed Huang Weio. Whatever the consciousness sensed, Huang Weio's sealed body could feel it. And like earlier, when Yi Qing Luo crushed that wisp of consciousness to Huang Weio, it was a heavy blow. My dear daughter, you miss your father already? Huang Weio's lips curled into a sinister smile. That smile didn't reach his eyes at all. The pair of eyes that seemed to be so cold that there was not the slightest bit of warmth made people shudder. Yi Qing Luo stared at Huang Weio as her pupils contracted slightly. You're not worthy. Not worthy to call her daughter. He didn't deserve the sacred title of daddy. Huang Weio did not get angry. Instead, the smile on his lips grew wider, and the cold aura he exuded became stronger. No matter how unwilling you are to admit it, your father is still your father. His black robe fluttered despite the lack of wind. Mysterious yin qi lingered around his body, forming a black, oval protective shield that enveloped him. She only met his gaze. Yi Qing Luo's hands and feet turned cold. She pursed her lips, shifted her gaze, and looked in the direction of Long Ao. Long Ao, her words stopped at the tip of her lips. Beside her, Long Ao, who was originally filled with ruthlessness and murderous intent, was lightly panting at this moment. He stood not far behind her on her left side. That black brocade robe was already covered in blood. His entire body was covered with scars. Even his face, which was half covered in scales and half handsome, had a few scratches. Yi Qing Luo's throat tightened. How did you? No wonder, till the end, Long Ao didn't say a single word. No wonder, after hearing Long Ao's voice, she felt strange. No wonder Long Ao didn't allow her to get close, and didn't allow her to touch him. The injuries on Long Ao's body were obviously new. Were the injuries he got when he walked down that tunnel. Chapter 5185. Long Aoyin's face was dark and cold. The murderous look in his eyes was extremely obvious. He raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Drops of blood. Chapter 5186. The Grave of Huang Weio. 8. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 5186. Not waiting for Long Ao to flare up. Yi Qing Luo had already raised her eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. She looked at Huang Weio. Her tone was slightly cold, without much emotion. Palace of darkness. The real palace lord. Why do I feel that you're so sour when I hear your words? Why? Are you regretting hurting my mother? Regretting hurting this daughter of yours? Do you feel that you've lived for thousands of years, but you're still alone, with no one close to you, no one whom you can trust? That's very pitiful, very sad, right? What a pity. People like you, people without a heart, are destined to be alone. Until you die, you'll be alone. The young lady's voice was clear. Every word was enunciated clearly. Not much emotion. But unfortunately, this made one feel the ridicule in the young lady's tone. Every word was like a sharp blade, directly piercing into Huang Weio's heart. Huang Weio's eyes turned darker and darker. That handsome face was filled with emotions, contorting, gradually turning sinister. His malicious cold eyes swept towards Yi Qing Luo. It was just a simple action, but it seemed to have gathered a majestic and powerful energy, suppressing her to the point that even breathing was a little difficult. Yi Qing Luo's face turned slightly pale. The action of bandaging Long Ao's wound was slightly stagnant. Feng family's lass. Long Ao frowned as he spoke in a low voice, as he turned his hand to support Yi Qing Luo's slightly trembling petite body. but his hand was pressed down by the young lady's hand. She said calmly, "Don't move. I don't want to waste my medicine." Saying that, she continued the action of her hand as her cold voice rippled. Being poked in the heart, turning angry from embarrassment. She couldn't even be bothered to raise her brows, not looking at Huang Weio's expression, but continued on her own. "Palace Lord of Darkness, aren't you representing my father's identity to thank Long Ao? What's the use of verbal thanks? Why not give me some practical thank you? At least let me see. How much sincerity you, who claims to be my father, has—" His voice fell on the last word. Yi Qing Luo had already bandaged Long Ao's wound. Retracting her hand, she casually raised her eyebrows and looked at Huang Weio. When she met Huang Weio's eyes, which were filled with raging waves of shock, the expression on her face dimmed slightly, but she did not have much of a reaction. "Ha!" Huang Weio let out a light chuckle, his thin lips curling into a sinister smile. "This mouth of yours is much more powerful than your mother's." He stared at Yi Qing Luo's face, which was extremely similar to Feng Ji's, as his eyes revealed an undetectable madness. Once again, his thin lips moved slightly as the words that came out of his mouth were cold and sinister. "It's better to be like your mother. At least you know how to be obedient." Yi Qing Luo's sharp senses caught a flash of madness in his eyes when he stared at her earlier. She frowned and could not hide the disgust in her eyes. "Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness, do you know what you look like now?" Without waiting for Huang Weio to reply, she gave a direct answer, like a panic-stricken mad dog. Panicking out of fear. Huang Weio's face turned cold. "What a joke! Just based on the two of you, you think you can make this seat panic." This phrase was really ridiculous. This seat's obedient daughter. Surely you don't think that, after obtaining the so-called God Emperor's inheritance, you can really override this seat's head? You're this seat's daughter. Your innate talent, how could it possibly surpass this seat's? Chapter 50-187. This seat had said right from the start, you inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance is merely a waste of resources. Only this seat inherits the God Emperor's inheritance. Then you'll be able to display the true power of the God Emperor. Huang Weio's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with greed. But it's all right. You inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance is the same as this seat inheriting it. After all, you are my daughter, and the person I want is also you. His last 3 words were suppressed to an extremely low tone. For no reason, it added a strange chill to the air. Yi Qing Luo could feel that he was staring at her divine phoenix, profound heart jade. The meaning of Huang Weio's words was planning to nurture the profound heart jade. When the time was right, he would use his method to strip her of the divine phoenix, profound heart jade, and the God Emperor's inheritance. Huang Weio could do this? Yi Qing Luo was doubtful and couldn't believe it. The God Emperor's inheritance wasn't that easy to inherit. Moreover, the God Emperor's inheritance needed to be recognized by the inheritance. If it wasn't recognized, it would be of no use. For example, Feng Liqiong was the same. That was why she was only an acting God Emperor for the past 10,000 years. Even if Huang Weio really killed her, he probably wouldn't be able to get the God Emperor's inheritance, right? So, what was Huang Weio planning? Yi Qing Luo concealed the deep meaning in her eyes and calmed her emotions down, not showing that she was affected by his words in front of Huang Weio. Her brows rose slightly as she spoke casually. The palace lord of the secluded palace is really agitated. Looks like I've hit the jackpot. She tilted her head, and her charming eyes were tinged with a bit of ridicule. If you weren't panicking, why would you, even when your vitality is at its peak? You still have to use a part of your divine sense to stop me. Her vision went past Huang Weio and looked at the bottomless tunnel behind him as she gave a chilly smile. When you sensed that Long Ao and I had entered this area, you became anxious, so anxious that You totally didn't wish for me to take another step forward. Yi Qing Luo's smile suddenly stopped at this moment. The coldness in her long and narrow eyes, as well as the flames on her body, instantly exploded. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace is taking such a huge risk to stop me. This is completely different from what you said when you said you didn't take me seriously. Is this what they mean by saying no, but being honest on the inside? The girl's mocking tone and that ice-cold expression. This caused Huang Weio's pupils to shrink. It was as if he had seen Feng go looking at him with hatred in her eyes. He vaguely remembered. Back then, when Feng Ge him here, she looked at him with that gaze. At that time, Feng Ge, just like the current Yi Qing Luo, his face was reflected in her eyes. However, he no longer welcomed the love he had for her back then. All that was left was hatred and ruthless coldness. Huang Weio's vision blurred for a moment. An indescribable pain came from the empty place in his heart. This kind of pain was extremely unfamiliar. This feeling of emptiness that could not be filled was extremely unfamiliar. He did not like this feeling at all. His heart was filled with vexation, causing his emotions to become violent. His sleeves fluttered and his eyes were as cold as an ice mountain as he swept out a powerful, profound energy, attacking towards Yi Qing Luo. That speed was extremely fast. Yi Qing Luo only felt a piercing cold air piercing past her face. The next moment, her shoulder was pressed down by Long Ao as he pulled her backwards. Raising her palm, she welcomed Huang Weio's attack. Chapter 5188. Bang! The two forces collided. Long Ao was forced to retreat a few steps and under Yi Qing Luo's tugging. She retreated a few steps. Boundless profound energy formed an enormous profound light in midair, enveloping the entire sky. Two extremely cold auras intertwined with each other. The entire passageway was filled with an extreme chill, as if they were in an ice house. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but shiver. Yi Qing Luo's trembling was noticed by Long Ao. He pulled Yi Qing Luo and leapt several steps backwards. He only stopped when he reached the stairs that he came from. This Huang Weio, even though it's just a wisp of his spiritual sense, and he was severely injured, he's still so powerful. Old Man Tsang's voice resounded in Yi Qing Luo's mind. Indeed, a person who is called a monster. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased as she stared at Huang Weio without blinking. As the profound lights collided, the power dispersed. Huang Weio's lips curled into a sinister smile before he made his move again. Long Ao fiercely spat. His face was gloomy and disdainful. He also pounced forward. Yi Qing Luo couldn't even stop him in time. As soon as the two sides made their move, the fight was earth-shattering. Huang Weio's attacks were extremely ruthless. Every move he made was filled with a horrifying killing intent, aimed straight for the vitals. Long Ao's killing intent also burst forth. This made Yi Qing Luo finally understand. What was the Azura of hell? His aura, which was filled with bloodlust and killing intent, was completely revealed. However, after all, Long Ao was injured. The medicinal pill which Yi Qing Luo refined, no matter how strong the medicinal effect was, it was not possible to make Long Ao recover to his original state in such a short period of time. In addition, the auras of the two Raos were too sinister. Yin energy lingered in the air. It had a huge impact on Yi Qing Luo. Long Ao was somewhat apprehensive. Huang Weio took advantage of this misgivings. In this exchange, Long Ao was at a disadvantage. This was an inevitable result. Of course, Yi Qing Luo couldn't possibly watch Long Ao fight alone and sit back and do nothing. Long Ao had brought her to the place where Huang Weio was sealed. No matter what their motives were, the only thing she could be sure of was that Long Ao had no malice towards her. Huang Weio seized the opportunity and made an illusory move, attacking Long Ao's vitals with a backhand. Swish! A wisp of flame shot out. In the midst of two gloomy and dark rays like a leaping flame, It pushed aside the fight between the two of them. The two of them quickly separated. That streak of raging flames swept through the air with a whoosh and returned to the slender, white hand. The girl's bright face was calm. Long Ao also took advantage of the situation to avoid Huang Wuyo's vital attack and flew to a safe zone. He frowned as he looked at Yi Qing Luo. "Who asked you to take action?" Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes. Her eyes were as clear as water, without much undulation. She pursed her pink lips and pinched the glower flame fan in her fingertips. Her clear voice was filled with some hostility. "Since I have already inherited the position of the God Emperor, then it is my responsibility to reseal him." Her gaze slowly shifted towards Huang Wuyo. "There's something you said that I don't agree with." She slowly raised her hand. The azure dew bracelet on his wrist flowed with a few wisps of cold red light. The cherry blossoms in full bloom lingered in the air. That was the azure dew bracelet, gradually releasing its energy. The red glow of the raging flame enveloped Yi Qing Luo's entire body. It set off the young lady as though she had walked out from a sea of fire, stepping on a path of fire. Her entire body was filled with a thick, ruthless chill, which didn't lose out to the two rows. Chapter 5189. Yi Qing Luo's gaze met with Huang Wuyo's without any hesitation. "The pupil surpasses the master." "So what if you're my blood-related father? On what basis do you assume that only you are able to unleash the power of the God Emperor's inheritance?" She slowly raised her slender fair hand. Her slender fingertips pinched a fierce dagger. "Trash seventh young mistress. Overlord, please be gentler." Chapter 5190. Atonement for everything you've done. 1. Currently in the middle of typing. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 5190. The glower flame fan retracted. The silver thread on Huang Wuyo's palm seemed to have come alive as it swam back. Huang Wuyo narrowed his eyes as he stared at his palm, which was covered with blood, for some time before he slowly turned his gaze back to Yi Qing Luo. He raised his hand and licked his palm. His lips, which were stained with blood, made him look even more treacherous. "My good daughter, you really let me down." Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change at all after she retracted the glower flame fan. Her vision sized up the surroundings. The energy which she released earlier wasn't weak at all. The feeling of the earth quaking and mountains shaking wasn't an illusion. But as it turned out, there wasn't any collapse in this huge and bright underground cave. Not even gravel flew around. It was as if the earth quaking, mountains shaking, and all kinds of collapsing and rumbling sounds were just an illusion. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased slightly as her half-squinted eyes revealed a wisp of cold glint. She frowned as she looked at Long Ao. Her wrist moved, and the azure dew bracelet shone brightly. A huge vermilion bird with raging flames appeared out of thin air. The moment Qi Yen appeared, it raised its head and gave out a clear cry. In this spacious underground cave, the echo reverberated, finally willing to let this sacred beast out. Qi Yen cried out a few times as it landed in front of Yi Qing Luo. Its blood-red eyes scanned the surroundings. Finally, his gaze landed on Huang Wuyo. That arrogant Qi Yen instantly lowered its arrogance. It's you." Qi Yan's head turned towards Yi Qing Luo as its sharp mouth poked Yi Qing Luo. He isn't. The four sacred beasts were once Feng Ji's contracted battle pets. Following beside Feng Ge, they naturally met Huang Wuyo. They had once helped Feng Ge and Huang Wuyo in a great battle. That battle, Feng Ge paid the price with his life, and they were forced to sleep for thousands of years. All of this was because of this man in front of them. But wasn't he already sealed by Feng Ge? Why would he see him again? Huang Wuyo's line of sight fell on Qi Yen, but it only took a glance at him before it shifted away. He curved his lips, laughing sinisterly and treacherously. Good daughter, you don't think a stupid bird can nourish me, right? 10,000 years ago, Go-er summoned the 4 great sacred beasts to attack me, but it was useless. Do you think that, compared to your contracted 4 great sacred beasts are a match for me? Huang Weo laughed confidently and ostentatiously. He slowly put down his blood-covered hand, and the greed in his eyes reappeared. My dear daughter, Go-er's soul has already dispersed, and I am your one and only kin in this world. Why don't you stay by my side? Not only can you enjoy my fatherly love, but I will also not bury your talent. Do you want to lose me, your father, after losing your mother? In between Yi Qing Luo's brows, there wasn't a single bit of emotion. It was as if he didn't take Huang Weo's words to heart. She sneered as she looked at Huang Weo, speaking immodestly. Your disgusting face really makes me feel disgusted. Her fingertips moved slightly. Following that, her peripheral vision swept towards Qi Yan. At the same time, Qi Yan opened his mouth and spat out a blazing flame, instantly engulfing the entire underground cave. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The sound of the rising flame was extremely clear in the quiet and spacious underground cave. Chapter 50-191. The flame darted and rolled towards Huang Weo. It brushed past Huang Weo's face. Huang Weo flicked his sleeves, and the dense, profound Yin Qi pushed the flame away. Soon after, the mysterious Yin Qi, which was as thick as a black fog, wrapped him up tightly. It directly blocked the burning of the red flame. He laughed sinisterly. My dear daughter, I've said that the 4 sacred beasts can't do anything to me. What can a stupid bird do? His gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was tainted with a trace of unknown mockery. But since my dear daughter wants to test it out, I, as her father, will naturally satisfy her wish. As his voice fell, the expression on Huang Weo's face suddenly turned gloomy. His face was filled with thick malice, and with the excitement of teasing his prey. The next moment, his body was like an arrow leaving the bow as he darted towards the red flame. He stretched out his hand and stretched out his 5 fingers like an eagle's claw, flickering with dark, profound Yin Qi. That destructive Yin Qi seemed to have opened its bloody mouth, as though it was going to swallow the red flame whole. My dear daughter wants to see vermilion bird die. I will fulfill it. Huang Weo's speed was very fast, but Yi Qing Luo's speed was even faster. Just as Huang Weo's 5 fingers were about to clasp the red flame's neck, a gust of hurricane struck. The majestic, profound energy surged, and the glower flame fan's wind blade was as sharp as a knife. The silver wire wrapped around Huang Weo's wrist again, and at the same time, the red flame's figure disappeared in front of Huang Weo. Yi Qing Luo's reaction was fast. She just needed to slow down a little. There was a possibility that it would turn into another story. She knew that Huang Weo was already on guard against her glower flame fan's silver wire. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to tangle with Huang Weo directly. At the moment when Huang Weo rushed towards the red flame, she summoned it back to the pet space in time. A soul-contracted battle pet. The master summon was the first to bear the brunt. Huang Weo had no time to react, and at this moment she seized the opportunity to clamp down on Huang Weo's wrist, which also stopped Huang Weo's mobility. Huang Weo looked at the scarlet flame that was just inches away from him, but it suddenly disappeared. His wrist was also bound by the silver threads, making it impossible for him to move. Using his brain a little, he understood this was Yi Qing Luo's scheme. There was a tinge of admiration in his eyes, and he didn't show any other emotions on his face because his movements were restricted. He smiled sinisterly as he looked at Yi Qing Luo. You're indeed this seat's daughter. You're indeed smart. This seat really wants to keep you in secluded palace more and more. Yi Qing Luo's icy cold eyes calmly looked at Huang Weo. Under the light of the blazing flames, the young girl's beautiful face appeared even more beautiful and elegant. She pursed her pink lips, and her eyes were cold. "If I could, I really don't want to admit that my father is someone like you." Huang Weio's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Unfortunately, there's no if in this world." He lowered his eyes and looked at his bound hands. His smile was a little sinister and mocking. "My good daughter's way of thinking and calculation are not bad. It's just that she used it on the wrong person." His hands were filled with blood as he slowly twisted them. He allowed the silver wires to embed into his skin, drawing out numerous blood scars, but he had an indifferent attitude. Suddenly, the black chi around his body shook. A loud bam was heard. The silver wires which were wrapped around Huang Weio's wrist suddenly exploded. That indestructible silver wires which had been following Yi Qing Luo, at this moment broke into pieces, as though it had lost all its vitality. Chapter 5192. Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted abruptly. That was the silver thread which a Xian had given her. It was actually broken by Huang Weio. Yi Qing Luo's brows surfaced a glint of bloodthirsty viciousness. Her slender fingers pinched the glower flame fan as her fingertips started to turn pale. "TSK. Good daughter, don't look at this seat with that expression." Huang Weio looked at the young lady's pale face as his thin lips curled into a sinister smile. "This seat had long said that based on your ability, there's no way you can hurt this seat." Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes to congeal on those broken strands of silver wire as she slowly raised her eyes. That pair of long and narrow eyes didn't have any fluctuation of emotions. On the contrary, it seemed to be stained with frost. Her lips curled into an enchanting but bloodthirsty smile. Then, "Did you really think that I summoned the scarlet flame just to tease you?" The glower flame fan in her hand spun, and the majestic, profound waves scuttled in the raging flames. Following that, it landed somewhere. She took a look at Long Ao's direction, and after exchanging glances with him, they nodded at the same time. Looking at the direction where the glower flame fan was attacking, Huang Weio's complacent expression froze at this moment. He was just about to make a move. Suddenly, a huge wall blocked in front of him. Huang Weio subconsciously raised his palm and slapped downwards. "Pa!" It was the crisp sound of a slap falling. Huang Weio felt his arm going numb from the shock. The huge wall in front of him was a patch of green and indestructible. Not only did his palm not cause the slightest bit of damage, but it also nearly broke his own hand. Black tortoise. It was the sacred beast black tortoise. Black fog surged in Huang Weio's eyes as he stared at the black tortoise, which was curled up in the tortoise shell. On top of the tortoise shell, there were two snakes coiled around each other as they stuck out their scarlet tongues, swaying towards Huang Weio, as though it was ridiculing Huang Weio. Just as Huang Weio paused for a moment, a voice rang out. Yi Qing Luo and Long Ao flew up abruptly as they headed towards the direction of the glower flame fan. Two rays of tyrannical, profound chi struck downwards with a chilly, murderous intent. Instantly, an enormous fluctuation of profound energy suddenly erupted from that direction. The surging, mysterious yin chi suddenly rushed out, madly twisting in all directions, forming a huge black light. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and received the spinning glower flame fan. Then he raised his hand. A tongue of fire sprang up from the blazing flames, washing away the cold and terrifying profound yin energy of the drizzle cave. However, this action caused her to bear the violent surge of mysterious yin chi. Yi Qing Luo made use of the glower flame fan to control the blazing flames, burning and dispersing the darkness. However, her power was at the stage of merging with the divine emperor's inheritance. Enduring the corrosion of the mysterious yin chi from Huang Weio's sealed grounds was a little strenuous. After a while, the profound yin chi went past the raging flames and charged straight towards Yi Qing Luo. Like a sharp blade, it cut open wounds on Yi Qing Luo's body. Get lost! Long Ao's sleeves fluttered. His purplish-black lips were tightly pursed. The half of his face that was covered in scales was slowly moving. Tightly, his entire face was covered with sparkling scales. His sleeves brushed towards Yi Qing Luo, isolating the profound yin qi which was corroding Yi Qing Luo's body. Yi Qing Luo slightly condensed her breath as she kept the glower flame fan. Her gaze stopped for a moment at the blazing flames which formed a fire circle. After that, she looked towards Huang Weio. Her lips curled as she gave a mocking smile. Your biggest shortcoming is that you are overly confident. Chapter 50-193. Yi Qing Luo summoned Qi Yan, not to deal with Huang Weio. Qi Yan's blazing flame could purify all the darkness in the world, even if it couldn't purify Huang Weio's profound yin qi. But it would definitely affect the profound yin qi to a certain extent. Furthermore, earlier when she made her move, the underground cave wasn't affected in the slightest. She already had a guess in her heart. This underground cave, perhaps it wasn't the real devil domain any longer. Or, to be more accurate, she was now in a completely different space. And this space was created by Huang Weio. So, any kind of power was unable to destroy this illusory space. The so-called underground cave passageway was probably just an illusion, which was also commonly known as illusion. The truth had proven that Yi Qing Luo's guess was right. When Qi Yan came out and released the blazing flame, the entire underground cave was indeed affected. Huang Weio was overly confident, totally not putting Qi Yan in his eyes, adding on to the fact that his attention had always been focused on Yi Qing Luo. Because of this, he totally didn't notice Qi Yan's motive. When the blazing flame burned the entire underground cave, the place where the profound yin qi was the densest, which was the source of the profound yin qi, would naturally be affected. This also gave Yi Qing Luo an accurate location, the direction where Yi Qing Luo and Qi Yan attacked earlier. It was the direction which led to the source of the profound yin qi. Yi Qing Luo guessed that could possibly be the place where Huang Weio was sealed. Originally, Yi Qing Luo was guessing, but now, seeing Huang Weio's reaction, she was basically completely certain. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as her pink lips pursed slightly. Huang Weio. No matter if it's because you're Huang Weio or the palace lord of secluded darkness, today, I will atone for everything that you've done. There was a hint of coldness in her voice, and sonorous and forceful, showing her determination. Her vision paused for a moment on Huang Weio's face. Following that, she suddenly flipped her hand and placed Long Ao, who was already covered in scales, in front of her, as she leapt and flew towards the fire cave. Her speed was extremely fast. The peach blossom dress only left behind a beautiful arc. Huang Weio's pupils trembled as he gritted his teeth and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Feng Qing Luo, come back here. With a quick sweep of his hand, the surging profound yin qi surged toward Xian Gui. Xian Gui's turtle shell was extremely hard. However, the mysterious yin qi that was filled with yin qi was like a thick black fog that covered it bit by bit. That kind of heavy and chilly feeling that made it impossible for it to move was still not a good feeling. Huang Weio passed by Xian Gui and wanted to rush towards Yi Qing Luo to stop her from entering the fire ring. Xian Gui suddenly rose into the air. The indestructible turtle shell fiercely slammed into Huang Weio's back. Then, in the blink of an eye, he disappeared in the direction of the young girl. At the same time, the girl's figure completely disappeared from the ring of fire. His disciples left behind blazing flames that burned brightly. The lingering sparks shone brilliantly on their faces. It also reflected the sinister and treacherous expressions of the two people. Huang Weio cursed under his breath as he clenched his fists tightly and chased after the ring of fire. A hand suddenly blocked in front of him. Huang Weio raised his eyes and met with Long Ao's cold and treacherous eyes, which seemed to be ridiculing and ridiculing. His face sunk. "Get lost." "Your daughter, indeed, looks like that woman." Long Ao's gloomy and cold voice had a tinge of ridicule. Chapter 5194. 10,000 years ago you lost to that new Rao. 10,000 years later, you're still being played around by that new Rao's daughter. Long Ao's tone was filled with ridicule. "Revered Weyu, look at your flustered and exasperated look. It's really ridiculous." Long Ao long. Huang Weio gritted his teeth as he raised his hand and locked onto Long Ao's neck, pressing him against a stone wall. "What are you so pleased about? Did you really think that you're going to help that woman now? She won't know that you're actually my man." Speaking till here, he suddenly laughed lowly. "Don't forget it's you who tricked her into coming to my formation." Long Ao's expression didn't show much emotion. He curled his thin lips as a hint of ridicule flashed past his cold and gloomy eyes. That murderous, bloody, and ruthless aura surfaced on his brows. He said, the moment she pushed me away, "I'm afraid she had already guessed it." Long Ao's brows drooped slightly. That cold and stiff face was covered with a thick, gloomy ruthlessness. "This daughter of yours is smarter than you think. She's right about one thing. You're indeed overly confident. If you want to leave this place successfully, it's best not to look at her." Pass through the fire circle. Yi Qing Luo supported herself against the wall as she stabilized her footsteps. What entered her eyes was a huge tomb chamber. No. Or perhaps it was a slaughterhouse. This was a huge tomb chamber. The place where Yi Qing Luo was at was the entrance of this tomb chamber. Huge coffins were placed one after another, filling up the entire chamber. Yi Qing Luo looked over. In the huge tomb chamber, there were at least hundreds of coffins. All the coffin lids weren't closed, as they were neatly lined up in a row, horizontally beside the coffins. But the most shocking thing was, many of the open coffins had naked corpses hanging on them, pierced through the human body with a sharp hook. Yi Qing Luo also discovered that there were a few who were still alive. Those corpses hanging above the coffins, or living people, were all covered with blood-red threads, almost forming a red net, entangling them. Even for Yi Qing Luo, when she saw this scene, she shuddered. What was Huang Weio doing? How could such a terrible Azura field be created here? Yi Qing Luo was just about to step into the tomb. Suddenly, he heard footsteps coming from the front. She immediately dodged and hid in the dark of the cave entrance. When he looked over, he saw a group of people carrying wooden basins and walking into the coffin in an orderly manner. No, those people couldn't be called people. Yi Qing Luo could obviously sense the thick, profound yin qi from them. It was a corpse puppet. These undead puppets were different from what Yi Qing Luo had seen previously. They didn't look much different from normal people. The only difference was that his face was expressionless and his eyes were lifeless. There was not the slightest fluctuation. There were a total of 8 undead puppets. Each puppet held a wooden basin in their hands. From this distance, Yi Qing Luo couldn't see what was in the wooden basin. The dead corpse puppets were expressionless as they walked to Lu Zai's coffin in an orderly manner. Then, he poured the contents of the wooden basin into the coffin. This one pour. Yi Qing Luo only saw some black-red liquid in the wooden basin. There were some things floating on top. After the dead corpse puppets finished pouring the liquid, another dead corpse puppet came over and took over the wooden basin. Chapter 5195. It was orderly like an assembly line project. He focused on doing the things at hand as if there was nothing else around him. After the black-red liquid was poured into the coffins, the living man hanging in the air, still breathing, was put into the coffin bit by bit. When the black hooks above fell, those who were still conscious widened their eyes in horror, wanting to struggle. Despite the large amount of blood that the hooks had hooked out of his body, he struggled with all his might. But they were still placed into the coffins. But when a few living people entered the coffins, Yi Qing Luo couldn't see what happened in the coffins from this angle. She only saw the moment the people entered. A black-red mist sprang up from the coffins, and immediately after, it was covered with balls of profound yin qi. Vaguely, Yi Qing Luo seemed to see those living coffins, one by one, stretched out 2 hands at the same time, stretched out perfectly straight. Then, it was surrounded by the profound yin qi. The arms were covered with densely packed bloodlines, following the profound yin qi as it seeped out. But after a moment, Yi Qing Luo saw those pairs of hands, withering at a speed visible to the naked eye, leaving only a layer of skin and bones. After that, pairs of skin and bones hands fell into the coffins. When the bones touched the coffins, there was a bang sound. After doing all this, those corpse puppets, one by one, turned around and left expressionlessly. This is... Old Man Song's horrified voice sounded in Yi Qing Luo's mind, in bloodlust skill. The azure dew bracelet on her wrist was somewhat restless, as if Old Man Song wanted to drill out from inside, but was trying his best to suppress it. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and pressed on the azure dew bracelet. What is bloodlust skill? The young lady's slender fingers gently brushed over the azure dew bracelet, suppressing Old Man Song's restlessness. Over there, hundreds of coffins to Old Man Song's spiritual body had a great attraction, as if there was some kind of power enticing Old Man Song. Fortunately, the azure dew bracelet suppressed Old Man Song's impulse. Coupled with Yi Qing Luo's comfort, Old Man Song calmed down. His tone was a little gloomy. I've only seen descriptions of this technique in ancient books. I'm not too sure about the specifics. This cultivation technique is an ancient forbidden curse, extremely sinister. 100 coffins, fresh blood and flesh, watered with blood. Old Man Song's tone became more and more gloomy, as if he was suppressing the emotions in his heart. This place of extreme yin to cultivate such an ancient and sinister cultivation method, the person behind the scenes of dark Nether Palace, wants to destroy the world? Hearing Old Man Song's words, Yi Qing Luo was stunned for a moment. This cultivation method was actually so powerful, destroy the world? Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes and looked ahead at the hundreds of coffins. She didn't know if it was because of Old Man Song's words, but she seemed to smell a faint scent of blood under the dense, profound yin energy. The blood threads that were entwined by the mysterious yin qi formed a dense blood web above the coffin. Then he followed the guidance of the mysterious yin qi. Little by little it spread forward. The blood threads weaved into a huge net that penetrated the stone wall in front of them and slid forward bit by bit. That direction, Yi Qing Luo pressed the azure dew bracelet as she asked in her heart, Old Man Song, what is the use of this bloodlust skill? Old Man Song's tone was heavy, as he said word by word. The ancient books didn't record it in detail, but according to my observation, I think that the dark Nether Palace set up the forbidden curse here to cultivate the bloodlust skill. Their motive is probably... Chapter 5196. Yi Qing Luo's eyes squinted slightly as she continued Old Man Song's words. To undo the seal? Old Man Song remained silent, which was considered as tacit agreement. When she saw this place, Yi Qing Luo already had some guesses. After all, in this place, the place where Huang Wuya was sealed, in 10,000 years, it had turned into a place of extreme yin, with yin qi lingering around. Coupled with what the Devil Hall said earlier, Secluded Palace was in the Devil Domain, which was also the secret powerhouse of this sealed land. Every day, there would be a batch of young cultivators being brought into the secret base. Moreover, she didn't see those cultivators leaving the secret base alive. Yi Qing Luo used her brain a little and roughly guessed some things. Those young cultivators had probably become the tools to bleed in their coffins. And the motive, other than undoing the seal, Yi Qing Luo couldn't think of any other reason. Thinking of this, Yi Qing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes as her gaze followed the sky full of blood web, concentrating on the direction where the blood web was pouring into. She pursed her pink lips. Over there, is that the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed? No wonder Huang Wuyo's ability was getting stronger and stronger. After being sealed, he was still able to split out his consciousness to create trouble time and time again. Previously, Huang Wuyo could only hide in the dark corner, playing with people's hearts to achieve his own motive. Later on, he was able to split out his consciousness and possess Gu Jingyu's body to exchange blows with her. Until now, he was able to split out his consciousness and congeal it into a living person, appearing in front of her. Huang Wuyo was gradually becoming stronger, probably using this heavenly Yin blood devouring technique. Huang Wuyo wanted to make use of heavenly Yin blood devouring technique to restore his sealed strength. From there, he would break the seal and regain his freedom. After all, it had been 10,000 years. The seal which Feng had set up was not as strong and indestructible as it was 10,000 years ago. Following the recovery of Huang Wuyo's strength, the seal which Feng had set up started to loosen. This was the reason why Huang Wuyo had so many chances to escape. No wonder Huang Wuyo wanted to establish a force called Secluded Palace. He couldn't show himself, and the amount of resources needed was simply too much. To nurture such an inhumane and insane force like Secluded Palace, it could bring Huang Wuyo numerous conveniences. But how innocent were those profounders? Why should she sacrifice herself for him? Just because the weak are prey to the strong? Yi Qing Luo couldn't agree with Huang Wuyo's way of doing things. Just like how she couldn't forgive Huang Wuyo for everything he had done for the sake of his ambitions. Girl, you should be careful. Old man Tsang's voice was somewhat grave. This place is Huang Wuyo's territory. He has used the demonic dragon to lure you here. So he definitely has a plan. Long Outyen was mentioned. Yi Qing Luo's curly long lashes drooped slightly as there was a trace of unclear emotions in her eyes. In his heart, he was more or less unhappy. In the beginning, she really did not suspect that Long Outyen was in cahoots with Huang Wuyo. Long Outyen was a man with that kind of personality. It was either black or white. People like Huang Wuyo, who liked to play tricks and scheme, were not easy to deal with. Long Outyen would definitely not be shameless. Therefore, when Long Outyen mentioned that he knew where Huang Wuyo was sealed and brought her there, she did not doubt his words at all. He finally realized that there was a problem between Long Outyen and Huang Wuyo. It was when she summoned Qi Yan and released the raging flames. Chapter 5197. He was just trying to stop her. Long Outyen's motive was to cooperate with Huang Wuyo to keep her in that illusory space that was isolated from the outside world. But in order to let her enter this place safely, Long Outyen had blocked all the dangers in front of her. So when she knew that Long Outyen and Huang Wuyo had teamed up, she still couldn't blame him. Perhaps this was Long Outyen's motive. Or perhaps she believed that one's mouth could lie, but not one's eyes. She could clearly feel that. When Huang Wuyo mentioned Feng Ge, the change in Long Outyen's gaze and expression, that absolutely couldn't be faked. Perhaps in Long Outyen's heart, Feng Ge really occupied a very important position. Even if Feng Ge had sealed her in the Divine Emperor's tomb for 10,000 years, Long Outyen had never hated her. Perhaps Long Outyen really had some difficulties, but these difficulties had nothing to do with her. Yi Qing Luo adjusted her emotions and caressed the azure dew bracelet lightly. I know I won't be rash. I want to survive more than anyone else. That cultivation method is too attractive to the spiritual body. That cultivation method wants to absorb me to become its nourishment. Old man Tsang's tone was very heavy and somewhat strained. I have to hide in the purgatory tower and temporarily fall into a deep sleep. Be careful. Yi Qing Luo caressed the azure dew bracelet lightly. I know, go ahead. Old man Tsang's aura gradually disappeared into the azure dew bracelet. Yi Qing Luo released the azure dew bracelet and slightly raised her eyes, staring at the sky full of bloodweb. At this moment, if he destroyed all the coffins that had been set up with the sinister forbidden spell, it would be impossible for him to escape. Huang Weio's plan, wouldn't it come to nothing? Cut off the source of Huang Weio's power could stop Huang Weio from regaining his strength. But if it was really like what she had predicted, how could she destroy this Azura hell so easily? With Huang Weio's cautious character, she absolutely had no way to easily destroy this place. She had to think of a way. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes flickered, incessantly, flowing with splendor. She paused for a moment, then quietly moved her body toward the direction of the coffin and stretched out her body. She had just moved. His wrist was suddenly grasped by a large, ice-cold palm. The powerful force made her unable to move even half a step. Yi Qing Luo's petite body instantly collapsed as she speedily turned around and raised her palm to attack. However, his outstretched hand was held tightly by another large palm. The refreshing fragrance of plums seeped into his nose. Yi Qing Luo's struggling movements stopped slightly. What entered her eyes was a face that was as cold as cast. The pair of emotionless black eyes reflected her thoughts. The man's thin lips were slightly pursed, and his expression was cold. Just like his aura, it was also extremely cold. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she suppressed her voice. Zhu Wu Xian, what are you doing here? The man in front of him was dressed in a fiery red robe, but he looked cold. Who else could it be but Zhu Wuxin? The moment she opened her mouth, the man raised his hand to block her lips. The girl leaned back and moved her head away, avoiding Zhu Wuxin's hand. Zhu Wuxin had no intention of forcing it. Seeing that she had calmed down, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his arms. The young lady's elbow bent as she blocked his chest. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she raised her eyes to look at him. Her eyes were filled with doubts. Zhu Wuxin quietly opened that pair of deep and emotionless eyes, staring straight at her for some time. It made Yi Qing Luo's hair stand on end. Chapter 5198. Following that, he lowered his body slightly. That black hair, which was hanging on his shoulder, fell onto her body. Yi Qing Luo's elbow exerted strength as she tried to retreat further away from him. He had already leaned towards her ear as he spoke in an extremely soft voice. Don't move! Yi Qing Luo's elbow pressed against him as she bit her lips, gritting her teeth in anger. Let go! If you go over, you'll be sending yourself to your death. Zhu Wu Xian's voice was indifferent. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased even tighter. Who said I'm going over? She wasn't an idiot. How could she possibly rush forward rashly? She had found the exit of that illusory space through the raging flames. Huang Weio had a high possibility of knowing her current location. The minute she made any movements, Huang Weio would find her. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, Zhu Wu Xian's hand stiffened as he immediately turned silent. His brows drooped slightly. This distance, this angle. Yi Qing Luo could clearly see that Crow's feather-like eyelashes drooping slightly, probably because Zhu Wu Xian was used to being cold. At this moment, looking at his eyelashes, one would feel that the arc of the shadow was a little cold. His face was expressionless and extremely cold. Yi Qing Luo couldn't tell what he was feeling right now. He had no intention to let go of her, but she really couldn't take it. Yi Qing Luo struggled as she tried to pry his hand away. Let go! This time, Zhu Wuexan only slightly withdrew his palm, as though he wanted to hold her again. But he only held her for a moment before he lowered his eyes and let go of her. Yi Qing Luo immediately retreated, leaving the boundary of his presence. Looking at the young lady's unfamiliar and alienating attitude, Zhu Wuexan's emotionless eyes flashed past a tinge of pain. His vision lightly swept past those 100 over coffins. Retracting his vision, he leaned against the stone wall as his voice was very light as he spoke indifferently. As long as you don't do anything silly. Why are you here? Yi Qing Luo repeated her own question. This place was where Huang Wuyo was sealed. Even if Huang Wuyo and Zhu Wuexan were in a cooperative relationship, Yi Qing Luo absolutely didn't believe that Huang Wuyo would tell Zhu Wuexan where he was residing. After all, the him now was still in a sealed state. Chu Wuxin's strength was unfathomable. If they knew that he was sealed, they would do something to him. That would become a pile of big trouble. Thus, how could Zhu Wuxin possibly appear here? Zhu Wuxin was silent for a moment. His cold and thin lips pursed slightly as he said indifferently, I followed you here. Follow me? Yi Qing Luo frowned. She had followed Long Outyin to this place. Chu Wuxin had been following them all this time, and neither she nor Long Outyin had noticed. This Zhu Wuxin, just how strong was he? Chu Wuxin gazed deeply at her face. His slightly hoarse and cold voice carried a hint of imperceptible gentleness. The yin energy here is very heavy. I was worried about you, so I followed you. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. So, you have been following me secretly? Was he a F** king idiot? Chu Wuxi nodded and then shook his head. On his cold and handsome face, there was actually an expression similar to that of being wronged. That kind of grievance was shown by Zhu Wuexan, who had facial paralysis, but it didn't seem out of place. The God Emperor's tomb has appeared, and you've succeeded the throne as the new divine phoenix. I know of Abyss Palace's thirst for the inheritance, and I also know that Abyss Palace has ill intentions towards you. He paused slightly. Those who weren't good at explaining unnaturally licked their dry lips. I'm just worried about you. Chapter 50-199. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips pursed. Towards Zhu Wuexan, he rarely showed this kind of expression and emotions in front of outsiders, and only showed to her. Even welcome, based on his character, he would never say such sweet nothings. In front of her, time and time again. Facing such a stubborn person, Yi Qing Luo really didn't know how to face him. Cold and neglect. None of them were able to make Zhu Wuexan let go of his obsession towards her. Now, to think that he had followed her to this dangerous place, no matter how strong his ability was. To be called a monster by Long Ao, to be able to cross hands with Fenggo at his peak, and was totally not inferior to Fenggo. In this territory which belonged to Huang Wuyu, once it triggered Huang Wuyu's retaliation. Huang Wuyu probably wouldn't care about Zhu Wuexan and directly took action. As though he saw the worry in Yi Qing Luo's eyes. A hint of a smile appeared on the man's cold face. He gazed at Yi Qing Luo, as his deep eyes seemed to be filled with tenderness. You're worried about me. It wasn't a question, but a statement. From Yi Qing Luo, he sensed the concern in her heart. Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't have much change. She opened her long and narrow eyes as she met his gaze calmly. I don't want to accept your feelings. The young lady's words were icy cold. She had rejected him cleanly. Not even a single thought was left for him. Zhu Wuexan's pitch-black eyes floated a few wisps of chilly glint, as it faintly revealed a ruthless aura. But very quickly it was suppressed by him. Yi Qing Luo, whose mind was filled with thoughts on how to reject Zhu Wuexan, didn't see this detail. This sentence was actually not a lie to agitate Zhu Wuexan. She wasn't willing to accept Zhu Wuexan's feelings, because she didn't want to have too much to do with him. The minute he really got injured or paid any price for her, She was afraid that she would feel a tiny bit of guilt towards Zhu Wuexan. She didn't need this chance to feel guilty. Her heart was very soft. It could only accommodate Di Emotion alone. The smile on Zhu Wuexan's face slowly faded, as he regained his usual grave and stern look. However, his gaze was still fixated on her without blinking. Then his thin lips moved slightly as he calmly changed the topic. "Only I can help you here." Not waiting for Yi Qing Luo to reply, he continued, "Don't be in a hurry to reject me after all. I also want to get out of here alive." Yi Qing Luo's words were stuck in her throat. Because of her, Chu Wuxin had entered Huang Weio's sealed land. Whether it was her wish or not, it was already a fact that Chu Wuxin was standing there. Nothing else would be of any use now. She acted alone. He might as well stay with Zhu Wuxin. Now, Old Man Song wasn't here. There were many things that she did not understand, but Zhu Wuxin did. After staying silent for a moment, Yi Qing Luo didn't have any intention to reject Zhu Wuexan following by her side. She retreated a little further away from the man, trying her best to avoid being too close to him and being contaminated by his scent. Her pink lips moved slightly and she said silently, "Do you know what this is?" Chu Wuxi nodded. Yi Qing Luo replied, "Then do you know of any way to destroy this array?" Zhu Wuxin shook his head. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips as the glint in her eyes dimmed. The next moment, Zhu Wuexan raised his hand and touched her. An icy cold touch brushed past her hand. Chapter 5200. Yi Qing Luo was still puzzled over why Zhu Wuexan's hand was so cold when she heard his icy cold voice entering her ears. "Look over there!" Yi Qing Luo subconsciously raised her eyes as she followed Zhu Wuexan's gaze. Over 100 coffins began to sway slowly, bit by bit. The extent of the swaying was very big. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to detect it. Yi Qing Luo wanted to ask Zhu Wuexan why his hand was cold, but she instantly threw it to the back of her mind. She stared unblinkingly at the hundreds of coffins. She didn't notice it, while her attention was fully focused on the coffins. The brows of the man beside her, who was as cold as cast, sank slightly. His crow's feather lashes covered the dark storm beneath his eyes. His arms hung down slightly and under his wide red sleeves. His 5 fingers were clenched into a fist, if he didn't sense wrongly. Earlier, Yi Qing Luo was worried about him, but it was merely because of the movement of the coffins. She had completely isolated him from the outside world. If it was anyone else, there was no need to use Di Emotion as a comparison, even if it was any member of her mercenary group, any unknown character. She would probably be more concerned until she ascertained that the other party was really fine before she could be at ease to pay attention to other matters. In her heart, he totally didn't exist at all. Yi Qing Luo didn't notice the change in Zhu Wuexan's emotions. She could vaguely feel the cool yin qi behind her. She assumed that this was because she was in Huang Wuyu's sealed grounds, and the surroundings were filled with dense yin qi. It was normal to feel the yin qi. The hundreds of coffins in front started to sway slightly but slowly. The frequency of the swaying increased. In the end, it became violent swaying. Yi Qing Luo could even hear the sound of the coffins hitting the ground. But when the coffins were shaking violently, the orderly undead corpse puppets still hadn't appeared. This also meant that this kind of swaying was within the normal operating range. While the coffins were shaking, Yi Qing Luo saw wave after wave of black-red liquid surging up to the top of the coffins. Wasn't that the liquid which the corpse puppets poured into the coffins? At this moment, the black-red liquid was boiling in the coffins. From time to time, it entered Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she seemed to understand the reason for the coffin's shaking. It was as if, because of the boiling liquid in the coffin, even the coffin was shaking. What exactly was that liquid? How could it create such a strong boiling point? Even the coffin can shake? Furthermore, just now, it was the black and red liquid that weaved the flesh and blood of the living people hanging on the sharp hooks into a blood net. Yi Ching Luo had a rough guess in her heart. Perhaps this coffin and the living person with the sharp hook were just tools and arrays. But the real thing that gathered the array and cultivated the bloodthirsty Yin art was the dark red liquid. The liquid was the true condensation of the cultivation technique. Using the blood web as a thread, it poured into Huang Weio's seal and became the crux of Huang Weio's strength. That's a medicine concocted by combining the profound jade heart of a newborn, profound practitioner with a forbidden curse. Behind her, the man explained in a low voice, while Yi Ching Luo's attention was placed on the coffin. The distance between them was a little too close. When he said that, his voice was very soft, but it clearly entered Yi Ching Luo's ears. When Yi Ching Luo heard that, her eyelashes trembled slightly. Chapter 5201. A newborn, profound cultivator's profound heart jade? There was only one way to obtain a newborn, profound cultivator's profound heart jade. That was dig out the heart and snatch the jade. This Huang Weio was probably really deranged. He didn't even let the babies off. Yi Ching Luo admitted that she wasn't considered as a good person, but she would absolutely not destroy her worldview, just for her own benefit without caring about anything else. Huang Weio, this kind of scum, was so scum that it angered even the gods. That black-red liquid was refined from that cultivator's profound heart jade. This obviously wasn't the first batch, and Huang Weio was able to grow stronger step by step to his current state. Apparently, he had already started on this method. Such a huge project. How many cultivators had been sacrificed? How many babies, how many innocent lives had been lost? Yi Ching Luo's eyes started to fill with a cold malevolence and anger. Don't be angry. Chu Wuxian's eyes drooped slightly as he looked at the young lady in front of him who was emitting a cold intent. No matter how angry you are, acting rashly is of no use. I have an idea. When Yi Ching Luo said this, a cold glint flashed past her eyes. Her pink lips curled frivolously, but that arc was bone-chilling. I need your help. Chu Wuxian's thin lips curled slightly. What do you want me to do? Yi Ching Luo's gaze shot towards the violently shaking coffin. Looking at the blood web, the cold arc on her lips turned gloomier. I think it's very simple, but... She paused for a moment, and her voice was clear. With your ability, are you able to hide from Huang Weio after he discovers you? You want me to attract his attention? Chu Wuxian asked. What do you want to do? Yi Ching Luo nodded. I have my own ways to deal with Huang Weio. Her curly long eyelashes fluttered like a butterfly's wings, concealing her eyes and the emotions on her face. She said calmly, even if I'm unable to stop Huang Weio from breaking the seal, I will definitely make him suffer a heavy injury. Chu Wuxian remained silent for a moment. That pair of deep black eyes congealed on that young lady's gorgeous face. That scorching, deep gaze. After a long time, he spat out a word. All right. His words fell. Yi Ching Luo only felt a cool breeze caressing her face. Then a red shadow flashed past. The man's figure had already disappeared before the young girl's eyes. In the blink of an eye, panicked footsteps and the sounds of fighting could be heard from the other end of the coffin. The surging, mysterious Yin Qi suddenly surged forward. Looks like Huang Weio was also attracted by Zhu Wuxin. Yi Ching Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted dangerously as her body moved swiftly and stepped into the coffin. Hundreds of coffins shook the ground. Yi Ching Luo felt as though her own body was swaying along with the vibration of the coffin. He stepped into the coffin. Yi Ching Luo could see the situation in the coffin. White bones could be vaguely seen in the boiling black and red liquid. Moreover, The bones piled up took up at least half of the entire coffin. This obviously showed exactly how many profounders were buried within these coffins. At a close distance, Yi Qing Luo also saw that on top of the boiling black-red liquid, there were many fine granules floating. The liquid was boiling too fast. Yi Qing Luo didn't really see it. She could roughly see those fine granules piling up one by one, forming a blood web which covered the entire cave. Chapter 5202. It was these things. She drew out all the blood water which was soaked in the black-red liquid in all the coffins. It was these things which gathered the energy from this sinister cultivation method onto Huang Weio's body. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed a faint cold glint. She could hear the sounds of fighting coming from not too far away. She didn't think any further. With a sweep of her fingers, she took out several exquisite porcelain bottles from the profound phoenix ring. She took a look at the porcelain bottles and opened the bottle cap. A rich, medicinal fragrance assaulted her nostrils. Yi Qing Luo held the bottle and quickly poured it into the coffins. Her speed was very fast. As she took out the bottle from the profound phoenix ring, she moved around the coffins and poured the medicine in the bottle, no matter if it was in liquid or powder, into the coffins. But in an instant, she couldn't find the bottle anymore. Yi Qing Luo calculated silently in her heart. Out of those hundreds of coffins, she had poured about 50 to 60 of them. Looking at the empty porcelain bottles in the profound phoenix ring, Lin Fan felt a chill run down his spine. Yi Qing Luo's heart was in extreme pain. This was simply a huge loss. All the various poisons which she had refined and brought along with her just in case were all poured into the coffins. Among them were many poisons which were refined from extremely precious poisonous herbs. If these poisons weren't able to poison Huang Weio to death, she would vomit blood. Yes, poison. From knowing the connection between heavenly Yin blood devouring technique and Huang Weio, she had an idea. If these blood webs were the source of Huang Weio's energy, she was unable to destroy this array. Then, what about contaminating the blood webs? The blood webs which had been corroded by the poison entered Huang Weio's seal and was absorbed by Huang Weio. All the poison entered Huang Weio's body. Could it affect Huang Weio's body? Even if it couldn't kill Huang Weio, at least it would make him lose the power to create trouble. After Yi Qing Luo finished pouring the poison, she speedily headed towards the direction of the battle. She wasn't too clear about Zhu Wu Exayan's ability, but Zhu Wu Exayan had created such a huge commotion. The minute Huang Weio made a move, it would be hard for him to escape. After she settled this, she had to remind Zhu Wu Exayan to avoid Huang Weio and wait for the poison to take effect. The dense and dark, mysterious Yin Qi rolled like clouds, lingering in the air of the tunnel in waves, as if it could freeze the air. After smelling the Qi of mysterious Yin, the expressionless undead corpse puppets became increasingly frenzied as they attacked the invaders. The man's red robe fluttered in the wind. As his robes fluttered, he did not give the undead corpse puppets a chance to touch him. The corpse puppets let out low moans, which sounded like the roars of wild beasts, but also like strange howls. Anyone who heard it would feel their hairs stand on end. Oh, isn't this young Master Chu? Ah, no, I should call him Pavilion Master, Chu of the Red Clarity Pavilion now. A sinister and treacherous voice approached from afar. The corpses surrounding Zhu Wuxin instantly scattered to the sides. Zhu Wuxin stopped his attack, stood with his hands behind his back, and looked ahead expressionlessly. When the corpse puppets respectfully opened up a path, they saw a man dressed in black, like a specter, taking steady steps as he walked over with an imposing manner. His footsteps were neither fast nor slow. That face looked warm, but it was polluted by the sinister emotions between his brows, looking like it was filled with viciousness, making it hard to get close. Chapter 5203. When Zhu Wu Exayan saw that man, he wasn't surprised at all. His eyes were calm as he met the other party's gaze calmly. One cold, one evil. Both their auras clashed against each other, as though it could overturn the entire tunnel. Pavilion Master Chu seems to be devoted to this seat's obedient daughter. The man's tone was filled with ridicule, with hints of malicious ridicule. For her, you gave up your own benefits and betrayed the collaboration with this seat. Now, for her, you dare to appear in front of this seat. The man sneered. Do you really think this seat doesn't dare to kill you? Secluded Palace. The mastermind. Zhu Wuexen looked at the man in front of him, that clear but vicious face. From his facial features he could vaguely see Yi Qing Luo's shadow. Yi Qing Luo looked more like Fengge, but it wasn't hard to tell that the man in front of him was Yi Qing Luo's father. This was the first time Zhu Wuexen met the mastermind of Secluded Palace, who was Huang Weio himself. All along, the collaboration with Secluded Palace. The one who negotiated was mostly Gu Jingyu, the palace lord of Secluded Palace. At most, he had heard Huang Weio's voice and had a conversation with him. Upon hearing Huang Weio's voice, Zhu Wuexen recognized the other party. Huang Weio walked towards Zhu Wuexen and stood in front of him as his lips curled into a sinister arc. Pavilion Master Chu, you suddenly lost contact and cancelled the collaboration between Red Clear Pavilion and Secluded Palace. These losses, Pavilion Master Chu has yet to compensate this seat. This seat has been looking for you for a very long time. I'd not expected you to send yourself to my doorstep. Huang Weio gave a low and deep laugh. That laughter was mixed with a sinister feeling which made one's hair stand on end. Zhu Wuexen allowed Huang Weio to laugh and allowed him to ridicule him. It was until Huang Weio stopped when he opened his mouth expressionlessly. Yi Qing Luo, I must bring her away. Huang Weio laughed even more exaggeratedly. After laughing, he then opened his mouth to ridicule. Pavilion Master Chu, since you like this seat's daughter so much, why not? This seat help you make the decision and betroth my daughter to you. How about that? The smile on his lips was filled with even more malice. Looking at Zhu Wuxin's emotional face, he continued, Pavilion Master Chu, in any case, we are old friends. If the two of us join hands, let alone the immortal realm, even the other great realms will be ours. Since you like Luo, I will betroth Luo to you, and you will take Luo, and live with me forever. Ambition and love are all there now. Isn't this perfect? You can't control Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wuexen opened his mouth calmly. She doesn't like me and also hates your existence. A stubborn lady like Yi Qing Luo. How could it be as Huang Weio had said? Just because you say so? Most importantly, he was very clear on Yi Qing Luo's hatred towards Zhu Wuexen. Yi Qing Luo loved her mother deeply. Feng Ji's death was caused by Huang Weio. Under such hatred, Huang Weio was still attempting to control Yi Qing Luo's future, not to mention what methods Huang Weio was intending to use to force Yi Qing Luo to submit. It was impossible for him to agree to it. If being overbearing was useful, he wouldn't have waited till now. He didn't want to see Yi Qing Luo's disappointed gaze towards him. He also didn't want to see Yi Qing Luo's eyes filled with hatred when she saw him. Chapter 5204. You're really a coward. Huang Weio laughed sinisterly. If you like her, then you should snatch her away and make her your own. Zhu Wuexen ignored his ridicule as he replied expressionlessly, If you really understand feelings, then you wouldn't be so lonely. Zhu Wuexen's words made Huang Weio's laughter stop abruptly. Huang Weio's face, which was filled with hostility, was now filled with a sinister and terrifying emotion. His gaze was sinister and filled with murderous intent. Who says I'm lonely? I was born to be the main god who stands above all the realms, and the path of the strong doesn't allow anyone else. Every single word and sentence was spat out clearly, as though he was saying it to Zhu Wuexen. or as though he was saying it to himself. Zhu Wu Xian looked at the raging Huang Weio calmly, as there wasn't any fluctuation of emotions between his brows. His thin lips moved slightly as he spat out the words. If you're really not lonely, then there wouldn't be Gu Jingyu's appearance, and there wouldn't be Linglong's existence. Huang Weio's pupils constricted abruptly. As though his thoughts were seen through, his embarrassment turned into anger as his tail was stepped on as his face surfaced. He flicked his sleeves as a thick, black, profound yin qi surged towards Zhu Wu Xian's face like a surging wave. What do you know? I kept Gu Jingyu alive because he's useful. As for Linglong, that lass. Huang Weio's eyes were sinister and cold as it flashed past. I just want to test if my daughter is real. Only Yi Qing Luo fulfills my requirements. Zhu Wu Xian's sleeves fluttered as his blazing red robe seemed to be burning in flames. It also brought with it a chilling coldness. It easily separated Huang Weio's black yin energy from his body. Zhu Wu Xian's eyes were calm without any fluctuations. I'm not interested in what your motive is. His cold voice was like an emotionless killer. Following that, a sliver of determination surfaced in his pitch-black cold eyes. His thin lips moved. I'm different from you. I don't wish to see her getting hurt. The cold man's words were sincere. It was because the mastermind of the secluded palace was Yi Qing Luo's father. Otherwise, Zhu Wu Xian wouldn't have the patience to bother about him. Of course, there was another important point. He had to fight for time for Yi Qing Luo. Since Pavilion Master Chu doesn't appreciate my kind intentions, then don't blame me for disregarding our past cooperation. Huang Weio's originally complacent and sinister mood had been easily crushed by Zhu Wuxin, leaving only a belly full of rage. As he waved his palm, the profound yin qi gathered from all directions. The entire underground passage began to shake violently. Zhu Wuxin was just about to wave his sleeves to block Huang Weio's attack. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a young girl who was quietly approaching him. His deep eyes dimmed slightly. In the next instant, his power weakened. A burst of profound light shot out and reflected Huang Weio's attack. However, the remaining power shook and landed heavily on his chest. The two forces collided with each other in the cave, creating intense electric currents. Zhu Wu Xian's body abruptly took a few steps back, swaying unsteadily on his feet. Huang Weio was still puzzled. Why did his opponent suddenly retract his strength? Was this some kind of new scheme? Just as he was thinking about this, he saw a peach-red figure reflected into his eyes, just as Zhu Wu Xian was about to fall onto the ground. Yi Qing Luo walked up quickly and supported Zhu Wu Xian. She frowned as she looked at Zhu Wu Xian. Are you all right? Zhu Wu Xian's pitch-black eyes met the young girl's gaze deeply. Chapter 5205. Almost greedily staring at the young lady's devastatingly beautiful face, which was just inches away from him. Perhaps it was because his gaze was too scorching. After the young lady helped him to stand firm, she retracted her hand. Zhu Wu Xian's thin lips twitched as the expression on his face was as cold as water. I'm fine. Although that was the case. But when he spoke, his tone was slightly heavy with a slight panting, as though he was suppressing some kind of emotion. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she stared at Zhu Wu Xian's grave and stern face, totally unable to see any expression on it. Pausing for a moment, then her brows creased as she placed her hand on his body once again. Don't force yourself. Feeling the girl's warm and soft hand on his arm, he felt a chill run down his spine, although it was just a simple touch. Zhu Wu Xian's heart seemed to be covered by something soft. His thin lips curled into an arc as he slightly leaned his weight on Yi Qing Luo's body. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased even tighter as she took a glance at the man who was leaning on her. His breathing slightly congealed. Her frown wasn't because Zhu Wu Xian was leaning too close, but Zhu Wuxian's injury was obviously not light. If it was usual times, based on Zhu Wuxian's temperament, he would rather forcefully hold on than to let her discover it. Unless he couldn't hold on any longer. Huang Weio's earlier strike looked like it wasn't light. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed coldly as she looked at Huang Weio, who was surrounded by the profound yin qi and was entangled by the thick black fog. She didn't discover anything. Leaning on her shoulder, that cold and emotionless man's lips curled slightly as he revealed a smile. On one side, he slowly got closer to the young lady. "Ah, my obedient daughter, so you're hiding here. You've made me look for you." When Huang Weio saw Yi Qing Luo, his eyes lit up with a faint flame. Under the wrapping of this profound yin qi, like a poisonous snake, it coiled around Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo gazed at Huang Weio as she scoffed. "You can't even find anyone in your territory. Looks like, as a spiritual consciousness, you're very weak." The young lady's tone was filled with ridicule. The corners of her eyes lifted, revealing a cold and mocking arc. Huang Weio's face darkened as he launched an attack with his palm. "My dear daughter, I will let you know the price of angering me." The whirlwind, carrying with it a majestic and thick mysterious yin qi, attacked head-on. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers moved slightly as her fingertips flicked. Bang, bang, bang. A streak of blazing red glow followed the arc of Yi Qing Luo's fingertip as it swept past. Wave after wave of explosions resounded throughout the tunnel like the rumbling of thunder. The tunnel trembled again. Yi Qing Luo supported Zhu Wuxian as they took 2 steps back. She glanced sideways at Zhu Wuxin's cold and pale face and asked in a low voice, "Can you still move?" "I'm fine." Zhu Wuxin shook his head gently, and his tone was very soft. But with that pale face, it didn't look like he was fine. Yi Qing Luo took a look at the raging Huang Weio and then looked at Zhu Wuxian. His brain was spinning rapidly, trying to think of a way. Zhu Wuxian's palm, which was on the young lady's wrist, tightened his grip. He coughed lightly with a weak posture. "Your plan, has it failed?" "I don't know." Yi Qing Luo shook her head. "But now you're injured, so we can't stay here. We must think of a way to avoid Huang Weio." Zhu Wuxian's thin lips moved, as though he was thinking of something. But finally he pursed his lips as he slowly got up from leaning on Yi Qing Luo. "I'm really fine, don't worry about me." Chapter 5206. Now isn't the time to be stubborn. After all, you got injured because of me, so how can I not care about you? Yi Qing Luo held onto Zhu Wuxian's hand once again. Her tone didn't have much fluctuation of emotions. Her pair of charming eyes looked towards Huang Weio's direction vigilantly. Because of that, she didn't notice the man beside her gradually darkening expression because of her words. Not abandoning him meant that in her heart, she still cared about him. But this kind of care was merely based on the fact that he got injured because of her. What he wanted was Yi Qing Luo's sincerity. If it was anyone else, would she treat him so coldly? The relationship between the two of you seems to be not bad. Huang Weio's voice broke the silence between the both of them once again. His sinister voice was filled with malice, as though he was mocking, yet as though he was scheming something. "Pavilion Master Chu, this obedient daughter of mine has deep feelings for you, isn't it? Earlier my suggestion, why don't you reconsider?" Huang Weio laughed softly. "If Pavilion Master Chu agrees to it, I believe I will absolutely not disappoint you." His laughter was sinister and treacherous. It made one's hair stand on end just from hearing it. Zhu Wuxian's expression turned cold as his eyes turned icy cold, like a sharp blade piercing over. Before he could open his mouth, the young lady had already pressed down on his shoulder lightly. Following that, her clear and cold voice rang. "Huang Weio, your move to sow discord is very low level." She tilted her head as her eyes were filled with ridicule towards Huang Weio, Indeed, someone who had been sealed for thousands of years, until now, still playing this kind of low-level and senseless tricks. Huang Weiyou said this to Chu Wu Exan in front of her. Wasn't he trying to provoke her suspicions towards Zhu Wu Exan? Once she started to suspect Zhu Wu Exan, then in this tunnel, she would be alone. By then, it would be much easier to deal with her. As for Zhu Wu Exan, after being suspected by her, he could only choose to agree to Huang Weiyou's deal and collaboration. That's a good plan. However, this also proved one thing. Huang Weiyou seemed to have a little fear towards Zhu Wu Exan. Otherwise, with Huang Weiyou's arrogant and conceited personality, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. How could he play such a trick to sow discord? Was he trying to make her lose Zhu Wuxin? As expected of my daughter, you are indeed smart. Huang Weiyou did not show any embarrassment at being exposed. Instead, he laughed out loud. That sinister laughter inexplicably made people feel uncomfortable all over. His venomous, snake-like gaze stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo as he grinned maliciously. The two of you have such a strong relationship. This seat naturally wants the both of you to stay by this seat side. He slowly raised his arms. The color of the surging mysterious yin qi became darker and darker. Immediately after, a violent hurricane was stirred up in all directions. The whistling was so sharp that it seemed like it could engulf a person. In the land of the hurricane, the thick black fog gathered into layers and layers. It formed a large black fog. It gathered above Huang Weiyou's head. Huang Weiyou's arms were raised extremely high as his black robe swayed along with his energy, as his jet black hair danced wildly. His power has become stronger again. Zhu Wu Exan sensed that Huang Weiyou's aura was becoming stronger bit by bit. His expression changed slightly as he clasped the young lady's wrist. Chapter 5207. He should have used the yin-devouring blood technique to inject energy into his body. Zhu Wu Exan pulled her behind him. Leave first. I'll think of a way to stop him. Zhu Wu Exan was about to move when he was stopped by the young lady. Yi Qing Luo shook her head at him as her narrow eyes squinted slightly, staring at Huang Weiyou's direction. Don't stop him. Let's take this chance to leave first. Huang Weiyou's original body had absorbed all sorts of poisonous medicinal liquid. This piece of soul consciousness which belonged to Huang Weiyou would also be affected. The more Huang Weiyou absorbed, the more the poison invaded. She couldn't stop him, but Yi Qing Luo didn't dare to guarantee that her guess was correct. So while Huang Weiyou was still absorbing the energy from the yin-devouring blood technique, she and Zhu Wu Exan took the opportunity to leave Huang Weiyou's line of sight and make a decision based on the situation. The two of them prepared to leave quietly. Huang Weiyou's gaze was sharp as he sneered towards the direction of the two and shot out a burst of profound yin qi. Trying to escape? The two words had just left his mouth. Huang Weiyou was suspended in midair as his body, which was absorbing the energy, suddenly fell downwards. A dong sound was heard. His soul consciousness was in human form, so when it fell onto the ground, it gave off a huge sound of a heavy object landing on the ground. Yi Qing Luo's eyes rose as her pink lips curved slightly. Success! She pulled Zhu Wu Exan to a halt as she turned her head back. She saw Huang Weiyou half kneeling on the ground with his back bent. One hand was pressed on his knee, while the other was pressed on the ground. Probably sensing the two's gaze, Huang Weiyou suddenly raised his head as he stared furiously at Yi Qing Luo. You, what did you do to me? He bellowed furiously. He was panting heavily and sweating profusely. That body which was formed from his soul consciousness was vaguely distorted in the profound yin qi. It dissipated and gathered again and again, as though something was twisting inside his body, as though it was going to tear his body apart and tear him into pieces. His soul consciousness became fainter and fainter, as though it was going to be annihilated any time. Yi Qing Luo sized Huang Weio up to confirm if he was pretending on purpose. Then, she nudged Zhu Wuxin. Isn't his aura very messy now? Zhu Wuxin's strength was above hers. His ability to sense Huang Weio's aura was also more accurate than hers. Zhu Wuxin closed his eyes and carefully sensed for a while. Finally, he nodded slightly. Yes. He paused and looked at Huang Weio, but his words were directed at Yi Qing Luo. What did you do to him? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she looked at Huang Weio's gradually turning greenish-black lips and that face, which was gradually turning greenish-black. Her pink lips curled up slightly. It seems that my guess is correct. It was not in vain that she had poured all the poison in her body into the black and red liquid. Dozens of poisons mixed together. The poison wouldn't kill him. It would also take half of his life. Feng Qing Luo. Huang Weio gnashed his teeth in anger. He was shocked and angry at the same time. He struggled to get up. What did you do to me? However, the intense pain in his body caused him to fall heavily onto the ground again. He glowered. His body was behaving in such a strange way. Feng Qing Luo must have done something secretly. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as her expression was indifferent. She didn't show any emotion towards Huang Weio's flustered and exasperated look. She didn't show any complacency just because Huang Weio had fallen for her trick. But the calmer she was, the more furious Huang Weio was, the more furious he felt. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Don't you know everything? Why do you need to ask me? Chapter 5208. Huang Weio's breathing became heavier. The excruciating pain in his body felt like he was being sliced into pieces. Perhaps it was because he was poisoned or because he was too angry, but his complexion was ashen. Finally, he gave Yi Qing Luo a cold stare. Then he punched the ground. The tens of thousands of hurricanes and mysterious yin qi intertwined, wrapping around Huang Weio's entire body. Whoosh! He fled into the distance. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips rose as she held onto Zhu Wuxian's arm. Go, chase after them! Both of them were extremely fast. At this critical juncture, Yi Qing Luo didn't hide the fact that she knew the secret of teleportation. Pulling Zhu Wuxin along, he executed the instant movement secret technique and quickly followed behind Huang Weio. Zhu Wuxin seemed to have known long ago, or perhaps he did not understand the teleportation secret technique. While he was being pulled by Yi Qing Luo, all kinds of teleportation, he did not show the slightest hint of surprise. Yi Qing Luo was leaning towards the former. The teleportation secret art was an ancient secret art. To protect the secrets of the Azure Dew Bracelet and the Purgatory Pagoda, she basically wouldn't use it in front of outsiders. Moreover, every time he was discovered using it, he would feel a chill down his spine. It would cause a great backlash from the other party. Given Zhu Wuxin's status and identity, it was impossible for him not to have heard of the teleportation secret technique. He wasn't surprised, probably because he already knew. Of course, that was not the point. Yi Qing Luo pulled Zhu Wuxian, turning left and right, jumping up and down. He stared at Huang Weio the entire way. Then the mysterious yin qi that was wrapped around Huang Weio suddenly crashed into a huge stone door and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Zhu Wuxin stretched out his hand and grabbed Yi Qing Luo's arm. Don't go over, there's an array. Yi Qing Luo had already stopped her blink movement when Huang Weio disappeared from the stone door in front. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the stone door in front of her. The dense, mysterious yin qi in the air was trying to seep into their bodies, bit by bit. However, it was blocked by an invisible ray of profound light. Yi Qing Luo was very sensitive to the profound yin qi. It was almost certain, behind the stone door, that was where Huang Weio's main body was. In other words, this is the place it was where Huang Weio was sealed. She hooked her lower lip. When she poisoned him, she had already guessed that this would happen. Once the poison flared up, Huang Weio's divine sense would naturally return to his body. As for Huang Weio's physical body, it should have been eroded even more by the poison. Hence, he could no longer control his spiritual consciousness. Therefore, his divine sense would be returned to his body. She would use this opportunity to find the location of Huang Weio's seal. At this time, Huang Weio was being corroded by dozens of poisons. All she had to do was find a way to enter the formation. The chances of sealing Huang Weio would be even higher. Of course. How is he supposed to break this formation? How long can his situation last? Zhu Wuxin glanced sideways and asked. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. I'm not sure. It depends on how strong Huang Weio is. Zhu Wuxin slightly lowered his eyes and did not speak again. What's wrong? You're worried that Huang Weio's weak period is very short? Yi Qing Luo sensed that Zhu Wuxian's emotions weren't quite right as she raised her eyes to look at him. The man's icy cold eyes were surging with emotions, flowing with a complicated glint which Yi Qing Luo couldn't understand. Yi Qing Luo was just about to open her mouth. Suddenly, the entire tunnel started to shake. A burst of vigorous and powerful energy with a large number of people suddenly closed in. A loud bam was heard. Yi Qing Luo felt the ground shaking violently. At the next instant, her waist tightened as she was pulled by Zhu Wuxian. With a leap, she avoided the surging profound rays. Chapter 5209. After Yi Qing Luo steadied herself, she immediately stretched out her hand and pushed Zhu Wuxian away as she looked towards the direction of the attack. In the spacious tunnel, about 20 teams suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Yi Qing Luo's gaze fell directly onto the leader of the team, Jirao. It was a woman dressed in a long, moon-white dress with an ethereal air about her. The woman's face was exquisite and could be considered a peerless beauty. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a cold glint and a bit of complacency. There was a feeling of looking down at Yi Qing Luo from a higher position. That kind of feeling of being high above. The lady's line of sight fell onto Yi Qing Luo and slowly fell onto the red-robed man behind her. Her red lips curled up, revealing a malicious smile. Just as he was about to say something, suddenly, her smile froze and her expression darkened as she stared at Zhu Wuxin. The words that were on the tip of his tongue stopped. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she turned her head towards Zhu Wuxian. The man's expression was calm, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. She shifted her gaze to the woman again. He was still thinking about the relationship between Zhu Wuxin and Nu Rao. Hearing that woman's ridiculing tone, with a hint of disdain in her laughter. Feng Qing Luo, I thought you were really loyal to the Overlord. Taking advantage of the fact that His Majesty isn't here, you're here flirting with other women. She sneered. If the Overlord knew that you were meeting with a man in such a place, would the Overlord still love you so much? The woman's voice was clear and pleasant to the ears. However, it was not difficult to hear the jealousy in her tone. Clear dove! Yi Qing Luo's pink lips moved slightly as she called out the woman's name. Whether Xian will still pamper me, I don't know. Her smile grew even wider as she met the woman's provocative gaze and said word by word, but I know that you absolutely cannot enter Xian's eyes. Who else could it be other than Qingge? This clear pigeon was the one which Yi Qing Luo had snuck into the Palace of Gloom's secret underground chamber from the Jiang family side when she was in Godrealm. There he met the woman. It seemed like his position in the Palace of Gloomy Darkness was not low. Most importantly, she had ulterior motives for Dmo Xian, a so-called princess who belonged to an unknown force. She remembered when he was in the Palace of Darkness. She had poisoned the pigeon. Even Qing Ji's secret forces could not cure the poison. How could he be alive and kicking and run all the way here? Sure enough, a scourge lives for 1,000 years. Yi Qing Luo sized up those people behind Qingge with a gaze that was sizing them up. The newcomers all had an obvious totem on their bodies. They were the people that Qinggu had brought with her. They were not people from the Palace of Darkness, but people who belonged to her faction. Clear Pigeon. How did he get here? What a coincidence! Just as she found the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed, he appeared with his men. Yi Qing Luo had a vague guess in her heart. Qing Ji's furious voice rang. Feng Qing Luo, the current you is suffering from both sides. Are you sure you want to anger this princess? When the words, this princess, came out of her mouth, Qing Ji's body suddenly released a strong pressure. That condescending and disdainful stance seemed to have already trampled Yi Qing Luo under his feet. Why are you here? Yi Qing Luo's expression was indifferent. That pair of long and narrow eyes were calm without any fluctuations. Of course. She didn't expect Qinggu to answer her directly. She only wanted to find out some information from Qing Ji's mouth. Chapter 5210. Qinggu gave a gentle smile, but the jealousy in her eyes was unconcealable. The reason why I am here is naturally to follow you. Her tone was complacent, but the way she looked at Yi Qing Luo was filled with hatred. Why do you think I am staying in the secluded palace? Why do you think the Overlord is in the secluded palace? No matter what, it's to find the real resting place of the mastermind of the secluded palace. Qing Ji's red lips curled up complacently as she looked at Yi Qing Luo's gaze, as though she was looking at a stray dog. Look at you, you've painstakingly come to the territory behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness and finally managed to get close to the person behind the scenes. But now everything belongs to me. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased slightly as she listened to Qing Ji's words. Her heart had an ominous premonition. She had not opened her mouth. Qinggu had already raised her cold and complacent smile as she interrupted her icily. You want to ask me, what do I want to do after finding the mastermind of the secluded palace, right? Her fingertips gently lifted a strand of hair which was hanging on her shoulder. That exquisite and beautiful face curled into a beautiful smile. But under that smile was a deep, vicious aura which made one shudder. I am from the Illusory clan. Illusory clan? Yi Qing Luo was dumbstruck. This was the first time she heard of this clan. Chu Wu Xian's brows drooped slightly as he looked at Yi Qing Luo calmly. The Illusory clan was a hidden clan 10,000 years ago, specializing in illusory arts and divination. Divination. Yi Qing Luo's brows twitched. Chu Wu Xian continued. And 10,000 years ago, the mastermind of the secluded palace was the revered, carefree Huang Wuyo. In an attempt to find out the meaning, to fight with the Tao, to dominate all living things. Hence, revered Carefree went to look for the Illusory clan. Indeed, Yi Qing Luo's guess was settled as her brows creased slightly. Chu Wu Xian continued. The Illusory clan originally predicted the future and changed their fate, so they had to pay the same price. No one in the Illusory clan could live past 35 years old. Because of this, the Illusion tribe rarely do things like predicting the future and changing fate. When revered Carefree sought out the Illusory tribe, naturally he was rejected by them. When Zhu Wu Xian mentioned the history of the Illusion race, Qing Ji's expression darkened. There was no longer any pride or jealousy. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips. Her voice was very low, and after the rejection, how could the high and mighty, revered, carefree allow someone to reject him? Zhu Wuxin's tone was still icy cold, but there was a hint of mockery in it. Yi Qing Luo subconsciously looked towards Zhu Wu Xian. However, there was not the slightest bit of emotion on the man's grave and stern face. His face was cold and emotionless. However, human nature is inferior. With an expressionless face, Zhu Wu Xian continued, In this world, there are no absolute good people. A portion of the illusory clan was unwilling to do such an unreasonable thing for revered, carefree. But there were also a portion of the illusory clan who, under the enticement of revered carefree, exposed their own wild ambitions regarding the current God Emperor's daughter. Is the chosen one the Phoenix Lady who descended after such a prophecy appeared? All the tragedies began. Chapter 52:11. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes trembled slightly. This was also her mother's tragedy, her appearance. It was all because of this prophecy. As for Huang Weio, he had plotted so much, just for this prophecy, which Yi Qingluo's pink lips curled into a cold arc as the ridicule in her eyes deepened. She should laugh at herself for being such a sacred and noble existence in the prophecy, or should she laugh at Huang Weio for the so-called prophecy he sacrificed? But revered Wu Yu didn't let the illusory clan off just because he knew about the prophecy. Zhu Wu Xian's clear voice was heard again after those ambitious people from the illusory clan tried their best to help him, just to obtain a way to live forever. Zhu Wu Xian paused. Qing Ji's gentle voice continued. In order to protect this prophecy, only he alone knew about it, so he exterminated the illusory clan. This was indeed something that Huang Weio would do. The illusory clan lived. This prophecy would be known by others one day. Once the prophecy was known, the Emperor of God would be watched by countless people. How could he possibly tolerate any deviation in his plans? So the best way was kill anyone other than him who knew about this prophecy, which was to exterminate the illusory clan. Qing Ji's eyes were burning with a raging flame. Her fingers clenched tightly as she looked at Yi Qingluo with hatred and anger. I am from the illusory clan. Our illusory tribe was annihilated because of your father. 10,000 years ago, when Huang Weio's clan was exterminated, the princess of the illusory clan had to pay respects to their ancestors and had to guard the grave for 3 months. Along with them were dozens of followers from the illusory clan, and it was this batch of people. They became the last bloodline of the illusory clan. The princess used the illusory clan's ability to find out about this matter. She swore to find Huang Weio and seek revenge for the illusory clan. After 10,000 years, the people from the illusory clan now, only them were left, and most of them were no longer pure bloodline of the illusory clan. Even the current princess of the illusory clan, Qinggo, was not pure bloodline of the illusory clan. Listening to everything about the illusory clan, Yi Qingluo's expression didn't have much fluctuation of emotions. She lifted her eyelids and looked at Qingge. Firstly, that man, although he is my biological father, he is also my enemy. Secondly, although Huang Weio played a major role in the extermination of the illusion clan, part of the reason was that the ancestors of the illusion clan made a wrong move due to their obsession with longevity. She paused, her long and narrow eyes slightly raised. From your point of view, you think that it's Huang Weio's fault, my mother's fault, and mine. However, from my point of view, everything is the fault of the illusory race. Qing Ji's face turned ashen and her delicate face contorted. Our illusion tribe was annihilated by revered Wu Yu. Is this still our fault? Then, because of a prophecy from your illusion tribe, my mother was deceived by Huang Weio. In the end, for the sake of the world, she used her life to seal him. Isn't this all because of your illusory tribe? There was no right or wrong in this matter. It just depended on whose point of view one was standing on. Yi Qingluo's counter-question made Qing Ji's mouth move, but she couldn't spit out a single word of rebuttal. Her fists clenched even tighter as each of her fingers started to turn pale. Chapter 52:12. Yi Qingluo didn't pursue this topic any further. This answer was something that she would never be able to get. She pursed her lips and looked at Qingge faintly. From the looks of it, our goal. is the same. Who has the same goal as you? Qing Ji's expression was cold as her exquisite brows were filled with disgust. I don't intend to. To let you seal him. What do you mean? Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes. Qing Gu snorted lightly as her fingertips played with her hair. Didn't Revered, we want to complete the prophecy from 10,000 years ago, and get this, so he caused the death of our illusory clan? Her red lips curled sinisterly. If he wants to complete it, then I shall grant him his wish. But Qing Ji's face was distorted from laughter. I want to be above him and become his master. Listening to Qing Ji's words, Yi Qing Luo felt that she had been driven crazy. To think that he could not think straight and wanted to dominate Huang Weio. Did Huang Weio look like that kind of person who could be manipulated by others? Don't think that I am crazy. Qing Gu raised her chin as she gave an unusually strange smile. I am, after all, the princess of the illusory clan and the one with the highest innate talent. Her vision looked towards the stone cave where Huang Weio was sealed. As long as he still has the ambition to break the seal, I will use the illusory clan's illusory arts to control him, Qing Gu said as she looked at Yi Qing Luo complacently. Get up, for me and my clansmen to be able to come here and gain the absolute advantage. It's all thanks to you. If I am able to succeed, I will definitely thank you properly and strive for. Her voice was low and cold. I'll leave your corpse intact. Looking at Qing Ji's crazed and twisted expression, Yi Qing Luo's face didn't show any signs of anger. Her expression was like water as she looked at Qing Gu indifferently. There wasn't much fluctuation of emotions in her long and narrow eyes, until Qing Ji's complacent and savage laughter stopped. Yi Qing Luo's eyelids moved slightly as she glanced sideways at the man in red who had been silent all this while. In her eyes, the man's cold and handsome face was reflected. The contours of the side of his face seemed to be meticulously sculpted. The lines were cold and hard, and they emitted a coldness that made one's breath stop. Yi Qing Luo's curly long eyelashes were like butterfly wings, gently fanning. As she looked around, he could not see the emotions in her eyes. He only felt that the girl's pink lips were slightly curved, as if she was smiling, but also as if she was mocking him. The girl's gaze was too stubborn. He had no intention of hiding it at all. Being stared at, Chu Wuxin's grave and stern face turned slightly red. He looked up and met the girl's gaze. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the girl's cold voice call out his name, Zhu Wuxan. The girl's voice was cold and emotionless, but not gambling gave Zhu Wuxin a very heavy pressure. Immediately afterward, the young lady's clear voice continued, You agree with Sister Qing Pigeon's actions, right? Her question was flat and emotionless. It sounded like a casual conversation, but in Zhu Wuxin's ears, it was like a clap of thunder exploding beside his ears. But he was only stunned for a moment. He calmly raised his eyes as his chilly gaze met with hers. When their eyes met, both parties had no intention to avoid each other. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled up as she didn't bother about Zhu Wuxin's act, as she tilted her head slightly and propped her chin up. Chapter 52:13. I seem to have asked a unnecessary question. She laughed softly. For the illusory clan to be able to appear here, it means that we already know the answer. She smiled as her gaze was fixed on Zhu Wuxan. Since you agree with Sister Qing Ji's way of doing things, then I have nothing else to say. Zhu Wuxan's face was facing Yi Qing Luo. That pair of emotionless, icy cold black eyes were surging with a silent wave. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to bother about him. She didn't have any intention to ask any further. Instead, she used her actions to express her stand. She slowly moved her feet away from Zhu Wuxan's side. She stood in between Zhu Wuxan and Qing Gu as she looked left and right. Then her lips curled as her smile was calm. My motive is to completely seal Huang Weyu here, or Kill him. There was not the slightest fluctuation in her words, as though she was talking about something extremely normal. Since our motives are different, then it's obvious that we are enemies. The young lady's gaze was as calm as water as it met with Zhu Wuexin. Indeed, between us, we are ultimately enemies. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wuexian's tone was slightly anxious as he called out her name. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled as she raised her hand to stop Zhu Wuexian's words. I understand, and I don't feel that you've made the wrong choice. She took a look at Zhu Wuexian and then at Qing Ge. After all, you're also from the Illusory clan. Zhu Wuexian's eyelashes fluttered as his thin lips moved. In the end, he didn't reject her. But Qing Ji's complacent smile froze as she took a swift glance at Zhu Wuexian and immediately frowned. Since when is he from the Illusory clan? What's with your beard coat? Isn't it? Yi Qing Luo's smile became even wider as her long and narrow eyes were frivolous as she looked at Zhu Wuexian. Are you? Zhu Wuexian's pupils contracted as the surging emotions in his eyes were about to spew out. Finally, his thin lips moved as he spat out a word. Yes. Yi Qing Luo smiled, but that smile was filled with ridicule. Young matriarch, seeing that Zhu Wuexian had actually admitted his identity, Qing Pigeon anxiously cried out. Hearing Qing Ji's greeting, Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. It seemed that Zhu Wuxin's status in the illusion race was not low. For the princess of the Illusion clan to call him young master. Zhu Wuxin lifted his eyelids and looked coldly at Qing Ge. That gaze sent a chill down Qing Ji's spine. She swallowed the words she was about to say. Zhu Wuexian's eyes calmly shifted onto Yi Qing Luo. When his eyes met with Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes, his gaze was slightly evasive. But in the end, he still met Yi Qing Luo's gaze firmly. He pursed his thin lips and said in a cold voice, I didn't want to hide it from you. Indeed, Yi Qing Luo smiled. When you took the initiative to talk about the Mirage Clan's past, it was already indirectly telling me your identity. 10,000 years ago, the Illusion Clan was a hidden family. What was a hidden family? That was a clan that was hidden from the world. A clan that only existed in rumors or no rumors at all. There were details about how Huang Weio had sought out the Illusion tribe for divination and how he had given a prophecy. Other than the people of the Illusion race, how could anyone else know? Zhu Wuexian took the initiative to mention about the history of the Illusion clan. He was totally telling her that he was someone from the Illusion clan. Yi Qing Luo linked everything together. He could roughly guess what was going on.